Chapter 484. In the center of Konoha, the rich land that used to be bustling with traffic was now in ruins. Jiraiya and Tendo Pain looked at each other, just like when they first met. However, several black iron rods condensed by Pain's own chakra were inserted into Jiraiya's body. These iron rods were condensed by Pain's chakra, so when these iron rods were inserted into Jiraiya's body, Jiraiya's own chakra flow was also stopped. Jiraiya held the black iron rods inserted into his body with his hand. His face was slightly painful. After all, when these iron rods were inserted into Jiraiya's body, the special chakra, mixed with the power of Rinnegan, had already penetrated into Jiraiya's body. This also caused Jiraiya's flesh and blood to be extremely close to the black iron rods. Every time he touched the black iron rods, he felt the same as inserting kunai into his body. Ugh! Enduring the pain, Jiraiya pulled out the iron rods one by one. Blood flowed out from the holes in the iron rods. Glancing at his wounds, Jiraiya made a few hand seals, covering his palms with a thick layer of oil. Rubbing the oil on his wounds, although it didn't make the wounds heal quickly, it has stopped bleeding. Jiraiya-sensei, are you sure we want to continue fighting? Tendo Pain raised his head and glanced at Jiraiya, who was standing opposite him, screaming in pain because he pulled out the iron rods. He didn't care about the scorched black on his face because of Jiraiya's katan. He asked with an indifferent expression, "Just now, I was just testing my skills. Without immortal mode, you are no match for me at all. You should retreat as soon as possible, otherwise, your life will definitely be left here." Pain's words were indifferent and even a bit contemptuous, but Jiraiya knew that Pain was right. In the previous battle, it seemed that the two were evenly matched. Although Jiraiya's injuries were slightly more serious than Tendo Pain's, they still had their advantages and disadvantages. But judging from the frequency of Pain's various strange ninjutsu and the amount of chakra left between the two of them, Jiraiya has fallen into a complete disadvantage. The chakra that was originally flowing in his body like a river has now become a trickle that seems to be on the verge of being cut off. Looking at Tendo Pain again, although there were a little traces on his body because of a moment of carelessness or deliberately losing, there was no way to affect Pain's state at this moment. Although there was a clear gap between the two sides, Jiraiya didn't mean to give up the fight at all. Using his hands on the ground, Jiraiya stood up straight with difficulty. Jiraiya stared at Tendo Pain with his tired eyes. Then he said very seriously, "Pain? No, I'll just call you Nagato. You know my character. For me, the Wood Leaf is my home, and it's the place I'm willing to give my life to protect. You destroyed my home like this. Do you think I'll give up so easily?" Tendo Pain's stiff face also showed a self-deprecating smile at this moment. He looked at Jiraiya and said, "So many years have passed, but I haven't forgotten that you took in 3 children who didn't have any ability to protect themselves. It was you who gave us some ability to protect ourselves in a dangerous place like the ninja world. Without you, we wouldn't be where we are now. I know that Jiraiya-sensei may have regretted saving us 3 children. After all, it can be said that I destroyed your home with my own hands. However, I am still grateful for the kindness you have shown us back then, so I will personally present you with the best gift I can give you, so that you can leave this world with glory, not with illness all over your body. Let me, the God who walks in the world, send you on your last glorious journey." Pain's words were ruthless, but they were full of a different kind of human touch. After all, for a ninja, the most unacceptable thing is to leave this world alone in a sickbed. When Jiraiya was young, he had been fighting with all kinds of enemies. Although he deliberately didn't let himself suffer any serious injuries, it was inevitable that many hidden injuries were left on his body. As he grew older, these injuries became more and more obvious. Jiraiya can still suppress the pain caused by such injuries with his profound cultivation, but Jiraiya knows that one day he won't be able to suppress such pain because of the weakness of his body. Jiraiya also had a strange thought in his mind. If he was really like what Tong Pain said, sacrificing his life to protect his home, maybe it would be a good thing. Thinking of this, Jiraiya suddenly felt that his heart became relaxed. His chest which had become heavy and difficult to breathe because of sadness and anger, suddenly became light at this moment. Now the so-called revenge and compensation in Jiraiya's mind has become a lot lighter. At this moment, Jiraiya just wanted to be able to fight with his disciple happily. Jiraiya's mood change was also obviously noticed by Pain. Seeing that Jiraiya was relieved of all the heavy burdens in his heart and just wanted to fight happily, Pain's eyes seemed to have a bit of joy and envy. If he can, he also wants to put down all the unwillingness, anger, and sadness in his heart and enjoy the battle. But he can't. Yahiko's life, the peace of the shinobi world, these heavy burdens are things that Nagato can't and is unwilling to put down. So, let's give something that I can't get to my teacher easily. Fight! 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 A voice shouted loudly in Jiraiya and Pain's heart. The two of them rushed towards each other with burning fighting spirit in their eyes. There was no unpredictable ninjutsu, no strange genjutsu. At this moment, Jiraiya and Pain were just fighting each other with the most primitive and most effective way to release their inner fighting spirit. At this moment, it seems that collecting bijou is not so important in Pain's heart. At this moment, Pain and Jiraiya only want the two of them to fight well. Chapter 485. Watergate stood up from his cross-legged posture and looked at the shadow clones sitting around him. Watergate's face showed a gratified smile. At this moment, whether it was Minato himself who had already stood up or the 9 shadow clones who were sitting cross-legged on the ground with their eyes closed, their eyes had turned into the orange frog eyes, and red eyeshadow had also appeared on their eyelids. At this moment, Watergate's posture is the perfect sage mode that Fukusaku Sinin said before. Except for his own eyes, there is no sign of toad transformation. Maintaining his human posture, but being able to use Senjutsu chakra like an extension of his arm, this is the most perfect posture that has appeared among all the sage mode cultivators of Mount Myaboku. Thank you too. Looking at Fukusaku Sinin and Shima Sinin looking at him with gratification, Watergate bowed to the 2 toads, who have lived for God knows how long, to express his gratitude to them for helping him practice sage mode. After Fukusaku Sinin and Shima Sinin saw Watergate's gratitude to them, although they didn't say anything, the gratification in their eyes was so difficult to hide. Well, Watergate boy, now is not the time to be polite with each other. Now would Leaf and Jiraiya need your help more. When Fukusaku Sinin mentioned Jiraiya's name, Watergate's eyes flashed with a dignified look. Only after successfully practicing sage mode did he know that Jiraiya, who fought against Pain Rakudo alone, had to have a death wish to be able to defeat such a powerful existence like Pain Rakudo. To Sanin, please open the restriction of Mount Myaboku now, and let me return to Woodleaf. As the Hokage of Woodleaf, I've been late for a long time. After hearing Watergate's words, Fukusaku Sinin and Shima Sinin also made a few hand signs that they didn't know how to use ninjutsu and open the outer barrier of Mount Myaboku. After seeing Fukusaku Sinin and Shima Sinin open the barrier, Watergate also used his Flying Thunder God Jutsu and Summoning Jutsu to instantly transfer to a relatively remote corner of Woodleaf Village. As soon as Watergate's figure stabilized, he immediately used Summoning Jutsu to summon Fukusaku Sinin and Shima Sinin to his side. He let the 2 Senjutsu stand on his shoulders to assist him in using Senjutsu chakra to sense the invading enemies within the range of Konoha Village, and the Senjutsu driven by Senjutsu chakra and the assistance of the 2 Senjutsu is naturally very effective. Combined with Watergate's understanding of Woodleaf Village, he quickly recognized the enemies in Woodleaf Village. 2 enemies who matched the aura of 6 Paths clone mentioned by Jiraiya were fighting fiercely in Nangong's house at this moment. And beside these 2 people, in addition to Nangong's aura, there was also the aura of a person who seemed to be very familiar with him. This person is the mysterious masked man who invaded Woodleaf more than 10 years ago and released 9 tails. When Watergate realized this, his heart was already filled with anger. But although Watergate's heart was very angry, he also knew that there were priorities. Although Watergate was not so clear about Nangong's strength, he also perceived Nangong's majestic energy through Sunin Jutsu, which was far more than the three enemies around him. Moving his attention away from Nangong's house, Watergate quickly perceived the 3-6 clone of Pain wandering in the wood leaf, but seemed to have been entangled by the wood leaf ninjas. But Watergate still didn't decide to help the ninjas who were still entangled with Pain's Rakudo, but continued to search. Finally, Watergate found the figure he had been looking for. In the original center of wood leaf, Watergate felt the aura of Jiraiya and Tendo Pain at the same time. "It's here." Watergate began to quickly use his flying Thunder God Jutsu, and his figure flickered and suddenly appeared beside Jiraiya. For Watergate, who suddenly appeared on the battlefield, Jiraiya and Tendo Pain's reaction was naturally different. After discovering the Watergate, Tendo Pain immediately cast his own Shinra Tensei, but the target of the effect was not others but himself. In this way, he quickly pulled away from Watergate and Jiraiya. Tendo Pain looked at Watergate standing opposite him with a guarded face, because Pain was very sensitive to find that Watergate had a special aura after entering Sage Mode. Watergate, who has a physical fitness and ninjutsu talent beyond Jiraiya, must be far more powerful than Jiraiya after mastering Sage Mode. Watergate didn't care too much about Pain's guard against him, because Watergate's eyes couldn't move away from Jiraiya's body at this moment. His teacher, who taught him since he was a child, was now covered with wounds. There were no less than 20 large and small wounds all over his body, which made Watergate very uncomfortable. But at the same time, Watergate was also very confused because Jiraiya's eyes were so clear at this moment, without any anger or unwillingness at all, but with an indescribable sense of satisfaction. "Sensei, leave the rest to me." Watergate looked at Jiraiya and said very seriously. Obviously, Watergate didn't intend to let Jiraiya continue to participate in the following battle. From the brief observation of Jiraiya's instinctive small movements just now, Watergate has discovered that Jiraiya's left arm and right leg have been seriously injured, and Jiraiya's chakra is also severely overdrawn. If he is not treated in time, his life will be in danger. Watergate called the little slug summoned by Tsunade, who had been hiding on the side and didn't dare to enter the battlefield, and put the little slug on Jiraiya's body. After the little slug talked to Tsunade, a green light with life aura was produced from the little slug's body, and it continuously flowed into Jiraiya's body. Seeing that Jiraiya had been treated, whether it was Watergate, Fukusaku Sanin, and Shima Sanin, who had been standing on Watergate's shoulder, all showed a relaxed look on their faces. Watergate also finally shifted his gaze from Jiraiya to Pain, who was standing opposite with a serious face. Chapter 486. At the moment when Watergate and Tendo Pain's eyes met, although they didn't say anything, they launched their attacks at the same time. Watergate quickly took out his Flying Thunder God's special kunai from the ninja tool bag behind him. The three-pronged kunai in Watergate's hand jumped and danced wantonly like a spirit with life. This was not Watergate deliberately showing his kunai skills, but through this method, Pain couldn't judge how the kunai in his hand would attack. Pain naturally also has rich experience in fighting enemies. Although he couldn't judge how the kunai in Watergate's hand would attack, he also quietly condensed his chakra towards his hands, so that he could use Shinra Tensei brought by Rinnegan at any time to bounce off Watergate's kunai. Watergate seemed to feel that his technique was enough to confuse Pain's vision, so he didn't hesitate to throw the special kunai in his hand out. After throwing out the kunai in his hand, Watergate continued to take out kunai from his ninja tool bag, and like a shower, he continued to attack in the direction of Pain. It seems that the number of special kunai shot by Watergate has reached the limit of the amount that ordinary ninja tool bag can store, and after observing that the number of special kunai flying towards him has reached the optimal scale to cast Shinra Tensei, Pain also immediately made a move. He spread out his hands and shouted softly at the densely packed kunai in front of him. Shinra Tensei. A powerful repulsive force appeared in an instant. Although Watergate infused chakra and launched it by special means, Such speed and power are still not comparable to the repulsive force in Shinra Tensei cast by Tendo Pain. After a short pause in the air, the kunai began to fly in the direction of Watergate. Seeing such a scene, Watergate didn't panic at all. After all, Watergate also learned some about Tendo Pain's ability from Jiraiya, so Watergate was naturally fully prepared. When a special kunai approached him, the Senjutsu chakra that had been contained in Watergate's body instantly broke out. Under Watergate's control, Senjutsu chakra turned into a thin line similar to the chakra used by ninja or puppet-type ninja. It passed through the hole on the kunai's handle, and the special kunai that were bounced back by Tendo Pain were all connected. Watergate waved his hand gently, and the special kunai that were originally shooting towards him were all in Watergate's hands. Watergate looked at Pain's direction and waved his hand, and the special kunai rushed in Pain's direction again. Not only that, Watergate's hand also quickly printed, and a ninjutsu was quickly cast by Watergate. Ninjutsu. Many kunai, shadowless clone jutsu. Using the shadow clone jutsu on his kunai, the originally huge number of special kunai also quickly turned into 2 into 4 into 8, and as far as the eye could see, there was an endless number of special kunai. If Nangongja was also here to watch the battle, it would not be difficult to find that although the multiple kunai shadowless clone jutsu used by Watergate seemed to be straightforward and without any pattern, in fact, the chakra threads that Watergate just used to control these kunai were not removed by Watergate. Instead, they were still connected to the kunai, so these special kunai were actually constantly moving their positions and changing patterns, making it difficult to see the weakness of the attack. Although it was a bit cumbersome to say, it actually didn't take long from Watergate's control of the kunai to the production of a large number of kunai and flying towards Pain. In fact, it was only 2 or 3 seconds, and because of Watergate's chakra infusion, the flying speed of these kunai was also extremely fast. It took almost less than half a second to reach Tendo Pain's side. Tendo Pain did not use his own effective Shinra Tensei to bounce off these kunai as before. Instead, he stretched out his hands, and 2 black iron rods condensed from his own chakra appeared in Pain's hands. Obviously, it was just 2 iron rods that looked quite light, but Pain waved them fiercely. Obviously, Pain had also deliberately practiced using his iron rods for a long time to engage in close combat. For a while, the clanging sound of the iron rods and kunai intertwining was endless. From time to time, it seemed that the kunai split by Watergate's kunai cloning technique were directly hit by Pain into a cloud of smoke and exploded in the air. Looking at Pain resisting his kunai attack, Minato was deep in thought. It was obvious that this kind of attack was the same as before. The previous Shinra Tensei could be easily dealt with by him, but why did Tendo Pain have to use his own taijutsu to resist these kunai that were attacking him? While Minato was thinking, Pain, who was attacked by countless kunai, threw away the 2 iron rods in his hands casually, opened his hands again, and said in a cold voice, "Don't worry, I won't be able to stop you. But I won't be able to stop you." Shinra Tensei. As Pain recast his Shinra Tensei, the kunai that were still attacking Pain in the sky were directly bounced back by the repulsive force. Just now, Minato used a large amount of chakra to cast multiple kunai clone jutsu, but it was so easy to break through, but Minato didn't have any look of regret. Instead, he seemed to have found a way to win, and his eyes revealed a hearty look. 8 seconds. After Pain used his Shinra Tensei, it took 8 seconds for him to use his Shinra Tensei again to bounce off his suffering uselessness. Although this time may not be so accurate, it was also a rare flaw of Tendo Pain that Watergate found after careful observation. I'm not afraid of you being extremely powerful, but I'm afraid that you don't have the slightest flaw. As long as he could find a flaw, Watergate could expand such a flaw into a bottomless abyss with his own ability. An abyss that buries the lives of his enemies. This was the confidence that Watergate had as the 4th Hokage and as the wood leaf of Golden Flash. Chapter 487. A large number of special kunai were scattered on the ground. Such an attack method is not very wise for other ninjas. After all, the kunai created with a lot of chakra can't exert its full power in the face of Tendo Pain's profound taijutsu and Shinra Tensei. After careful calculation, it is actually not worth the loss. But Watergate is not an ordinary ninja, and the kunai launched by Watergate are not ordinary kunai. These special kunai scattered all over the battlefield are the space coordinates for Watergate to cast Flying Thunder God Jutsu, and a place with a large number of space coordinates is the best battlefield for Watergate. Pain also knows about Watergate's ability. These special kunai inserted in the large and small corners of the battlefield are the space coordinates of Watergate's Flying Thunder God Jutsu. Pain is also very clear about this. But Pain is unwilling to spend a lot of chakra again to destroy the battle environment created by Watergate for himself. Whether this is because of Pain's consideration of preserving his strength, or because of his pride as a god, we don't know. When his battle environment and layout were completed, Watergate also nodded slightly. The test is over, so the real battle is about to begin, isn't it? Spiral Flash Super Wheel Dance Roar Third Style. A long and even a little funny name was spat out from Watergate's mouth. And when the first sound of this sentence came out from Watergate's mouth, Watergate's figure has already disappeared. Pain immediately became alert at the moment when Watergate's figure disappeared. Such a combination of high-speed space ninjutsu, such as Flying Thunder God Jutsu, and powerful ninjutsu, such as Rasengan. Any enemy has to be on guard. Sure enough, Watergate's figure suddenly appeared behind Pain, and in Watergate's hands were two Rasengan mixed with Senjutsu chakra, shining with blue light and a little green halo. Watergate just wanted to press the Rasengan in his hand on Pain's body, but Pain immediately reacted and directly jumped away from Watergate's attack and quickly opened one of his hands in the direction of Watergate. Shinra Tensei, a powerful repulsive force, immediately acted on Watergate's body, although Watergate also has the ability to resist such repulsive force for a while. But Watergate completely took such a repulsive attack as if he was not on guard, and Watergate's figure directly flew out under the influence of the repulsive force. The white Haori on his body was blown away by the strong wind, and Watergate has entered Sage mode at this moment. He can quickly cast his Flying Thunder God Jutsu with the help of Senjutsu Chakra. So Watergate's body was still flying because of the repulsive attack, but Watergate disappeared out of thin air in midair. Pain felt like he was fooled. Watergate's attack speed, just now, was not Watergate's fastest attack speed. When Pain carefully thought about the scene just now, it was not difficult to find that Watergate deliberately led him to cast his Shinra Tensei. Others don't know, but Pain's heart is very clear. Although his Shinra Tensei has great power, it can only be cast with the help of the power of Rinnegan. Every time he casts it, Rinnegan needs to go through a short period of power accumulation before he can use it again. And such a power accumulation time is not long, but it is not short, a full 5 seconds. When he casts Shinra Tensei, it is equivalent to going through a dangerous period of 5 seconds. In such a dangerous period, if he was facing a ninja who wasn't that strong, he wouldn't need to care much about it. But the one standing in front of him was Namikaze Minato, whose strength was almost beyond the ordinary Kage tier. And after using Sage mode, Minato's danger level was enough to rival those ninjas who had become legends in the world of ninja. Before Pain had time to think about it, Watergate's figure appeared again. Unlike the previous deliberately slow speed that could be detected by Pain, this time Watergate almost completely displayed his terrifying speed after being enhanced by the Senjutsu Chakra. And in order to make his attack more confusing, Watergate even constantly jumped between different spatial coordinates. Even with the help of his Rinnegan, it was difficult for Pain, who was standing on the opposite side of Minato, to detect which one was the real Minato and which one was the shadow of the densely packed Minato standing around him. And even if Pain can really detect where Watergate's real body is, what can he do? As long as Watergate's mind moves, he can instantly replace the afterimages in other places. Therefore, for Pain, he can only catch Watergate's attack, or use a large-scale ninjutsu when Watergate hasn't launched an attack on himself, directly covering Watergate's real body and his afterimages completely. Senjutsu Yin Yang Spiral Maru. Watergate's figure jumped several times, and his real body cooperated with those afterimages to confuse Pain. Watergate finally pressed the 2 Rasengan in his hand, mixed with Senjutsu chakra, on Pain's body. At the same time, when Rasengan attacked Tendo Pain, Minato shouted the name of the ninjutsu he used. Pain, who was unprepared, or even if he was prepared, he couldn't avoid Watergate's attack. When the 2 Rasengan attacked him at the same time, he was hit by Watergate's Rasengan rotating in 2 different ways. The 2 forces, one positive and one negative, acted on Pain's body at the same time. Under the influence of the huge, explosive force and impact, Pain's figure was immediately sent flying. Just now, it was Watergate who was hit by Shinra Tensei. In just a few seconds, Pain became the one who flew out. However, although Pain was powerful, he was not Watergate. In the process of flying out, there was no way to adjust his body with Flying Thunder God Jutsu, so Pain's body could only directly hit a relatively large piece of debris, splashing a lot of smoke. Although his attack was very effective, Minato didn't let his guard down. After all, his enemy was Pain, the leader of Akatsuki. Although such an attack may cause some trouble to him, it was not enough to directly defeat such an enemy. Chapter 488. Just when Watergate saw Tendo Pain flying out, his figure was covered by smoke. His figure immediately flashed and stood close to Tendo Pain. Watergate's hand began to print, preparing to cast a small wind-release ninjutsu to disperse the smoke. Before the ninjutsu was cast, 3 figures had already blocked in front of Watergate. Although the appearance of the 3 figures standing in front of the Watergate were different, but all of them had orange hair and black iron rod-like ornaments on their face. And they were wearing Akatsuki's uniform with black silk and red clouds on their body. These 3 people are Jigakudo, Gakido, and Chikashodo, who were previously entangled by other ninjas of Woodleaf Village. These 3 Rikudo doppelgangers blocked in front of Watergate. It seems that when Watergate and Tendo Pain had just fought, they had already begun to forcibly break through the entanglement of other ninjas for Woodleaf Village to help Tendo Pain. Looking at the injuries on their bodies, it was clear that they had paid a certain price to come here. It's just that dealing with a Rikudo doppelganger is a little troublesome for Watergate, who now has the strength beyond Kaga level, but it's not that difficult. But now 4 Rikudo doppelganger came out of Rindo and Ashirado because of the battle with Nangong-ja. 2/3 of the power of Pain's Rikudo has been gathered here. After seeing the appearance of such 3 Rikudo doppelganger, Watergate's eyes also became very serious. Jigakudo, Pain got into the smoke, his hand quickly printed, and a gate in the shape of the King of Hell was summoned by Jigakudo Pain. Tendo Pain, who had 2 huge pits on his body, was placed in it. Obviously, Jigakudo was using his own power to repair Tendo Pain, who had been damaged to a certain extent. In order to buy time to repair Tendo Pain, Gakido, Chikashodo, and Jigakudo's doppelganger were all near the King of Hell summoned by Jigakudo. Chikashodo was the first of the 3 Rikudo doppelganger to act, and his hand quickly printed. When he was entangled by Woodleaf ninjas, Chikashodo's chakra had been consumed a lot. So now Chikashodo can only summon 3 giant summoned beasts, which are the rhinoceros, water buffalo, and centipede with relatively high attack power. The 3 Rikudo doppelganger gathered now almost has no particularly powerful attack power. The only one who can be regarded as an attacker is Chikashodo, a summoner-like character. Looking at the Rikudo doppelganger in front of him, Watergate immediately began to act. Judging from the actions of these 3 people just now and some information brought to him by Jiraiya Sensei, Chikashodo Pain mainly summons a variety of summoned beasts as his means of attack, while Gakido Pain can absorb the ninjutsu or chakra inside the body of the person who attacked him. As for Jigakudo, who had been invisible during the battle with Jiraiya before, now it seems that he can cast an ability to repair Pain's Rikudo. Years of combat experience immediately made Watergate make a judgment. He must first defeat this Jigakudo pain with the ability to repair, otherwise he will face more trouble. Now that he had judged his target, Watergate naturally acted immediately. Watergate began to print quickly, and two shadow doppelganger that did not show the characteristics of Sage Mode were summoned to his side. Although there is no Senjutsu chakra in his body, these shadow doppelganger can also cast Flying Thunder God Jutsu. Although they didn't speak, Watergate and his shadow doppelganger were telepathically connected. At the same time, the two shadow doppelgangers used Flying Thunder God Jutsu to arrive on top of the rhinoceros and water buffalo summoned by Chikishoto. Although the rhinoceros and water buffalo frantically struggled to get rid of the ants on top of their heads, Minato's two shadow doppelgangers attached chakra to their feet and firmly stood on top of the rhinoceros and water buffalo, these two huge summoned beasts. The two shadow doppelganger each stretched out their hands, and a Rasengan immediately appeared in their hands. But Watergate's shadow doppelganger didn't press down the Rasengan in his hand. Instead, he kept sending chakra into the Rasengan. With the continuous infusion of chakra, the Rasengan also continued to expand. Finally, when the Rasengan had become a huge blue sphere with a diameter of nearly 2 meters, Watergate's two shadow doppelganger looked at each other and pressed the Odama Rasengan in their hands towards the huge summoned beast under them. And the Odama Rasengan didn't disappoint Watergate's expectations. It directly pressed the two huge summoned beasts to the ground and lost their fighting ability. As for Watergate's main body, he was also standing on the head of the centipede summoned beast at this moment, holding a Rasengan in his hand. Although it didn't have a diameter of nearly 2 meters like the Odama Rasengan, it exceeded the general Rasengan and was about the size of a basketball. Although the size was small, because it contained Senjutsu chakra, the dangerous aura released from it was even more than the Odama Rasengan. Watergate also pressed his hand on the head of the centipede summoned beast, and the basketball-sized Rasengan infused with Senjutsu chakra directly bombarded the huge centipede. Unlike the buffalo and rhinoceros that were directly knocked out before, the Rasengan infused with Senjutsu chakra was obviously more powerful. The huge centipede, which was 7 or 8 meters high, directly burst open after being hit. All kinds of colorful organs that belonged to the centipede were scattered all over the ground. If it was only the injuries of the buffalo and rhinoceros, it was still possible to recover after a period of recuperation. However, there was no room for recovery when the centipede's brain was damaged. This rare and huge psychic beast was destroyed here, which made the animal path's pain feel very distressed. Just when everyone's attention was on the centipede and Watergate, who was standing next to the corpse of the huge centipede, a figure suddenly appeared next to Pain, who was standing behind the three of them. He had a head of golden hair, a snow-white Haori with flame patterns, and a pair of toad-like eyes and eyeshadow. All of these were proof of this person's identity. With Leaf's fourth Hokage, Watergate. Chapter 489. Watergate, who suddenly appeared next to Jigakudo Pain, naturally couldn't be unarmed just to say hello to Jigakudo Pain, or Watergate wanted to use the same basketball-sized Rasengan mixed with Senjutsu chakra that killed the giant summoned beast centipede before. Jigakudo Pain is a ninja who is more inclined to support. Although his physical fitness and attack ability have reached the general level of Jonin, that's all. For Watergate, who is in Sage Mode at this moment, a Jonin is really not enough. The Rasengan mixed with Senjutsu chakra was about to hit Jigakudo's body directly. Although Gakido Pain, who was standing next to Jigakudo Pain, couldn't completely block the Rasengan with his body, he still used his hand to grab the wrist of Watergate's hand that was holding the Rasengan. He began to absorb Watergate's chakra with almost all his strength, and the Rasengan in Watergate's hand began to shrink slowly, like a basketball that was inserted with a deflating valve. It shrank visibly. But although Gakido Pain tried his best to absorb the chakra in Watergate's hand, the distance between Watergate and Jigakudo was too close. When the basketball-sized Rasengan shrank to the size of a volleyball, it finally hit Jigakudo Pain's body. After absorbing a large amount of Senjutsu chakra, There was no systematic training for Senjutsu, chakra, and natural energy. Even with Sage Mode, there was no way to suppress the natural energy with natural energy. The natural energy that couldn't be suppressed naturally rioted in Gekido's body, and a large amount of natural energy was constantly wandering around in Gekido's body. Gekido's body began to quickly turn into a toad, his skin became rough, and pieces of meat constantly appeared under the skin of Gekido's body. After a while, Gekido's body, which had absorbed a large amount of Senjutsu chakra, had a tendency to turn into a stone toad. Jigakudo Pain, who was directly hit by the Rasengan, was also directly blown away. The physical fitness of Jigakudo Pain, who was at a relatively weak level in the 6 paths of pain, was even worse than Tendo Pain, who was hit by 2 Rasengan at the same time. A huge crater appeared at the place where the Rasengan hit. Although there was no large amount of blood flowing out, such a large piece of flesh was directly scraped off by the Rasengan, and the spine of the Jigakudo was directly broken. Although Rakudo's body's body, it to be directly beaten like this is inevitable to be unable to move or even be directly destroyed. To be destroyed, to be directly to be beaten like this. 2. The battle only lasted for a moment, and 2 of the 3 Pain Rakudo who had just arrived were directly scrapped. All of this development was indeed beyond the imagination of everyone except Watergate. In fact, this is also a logical thing. On the one hand, compared to Jiraiya, Watergate's Sage Mode was more perfect. Watergate's own stronger body and more skilled and perfect Sage Mode undoubtedly allowed Watergate to obtain far more power than Jiraiya had after entering Sage Mode. After seeing Watergate, Pain didn't fully recognize the difference between Watergate and Jiraiya. At first, he even wanted to use Tendo Pain to block Watergate, who entered Sage Mode, which was undoubtedly a very obvious mistake. After that, because of the distribution of combat power, the Rakudo doppelganger that came to support did not have the powerful attack power to block Watergate. Under Watergate's strategy of diversion, it seemed that they couldn't react in time. And because Gekido was eager to rescue Jigakudo, he directly absorbed Senjutsu chakra, which contained natural energy, into his body. It can be said that Watergate's action had an unexpected gain. Just like that, this wave of reinforcements turned into a perfect gift, allowing the Water Sect to earn a lot of money. Chikishoto was a little slow to react when he saw the other 2 Rakudo doppelganger also leave the battlefield so quickly. A trace of annoyance flashed in his eyes. If he knew this would happen, he would have forcibly summoned the 2 Rakudo doppelganger that were held back by Nangongja before entering the battlefield. Otherwise, they wouldn't have fallen into such a dangerous situation. But if he knew that it would always be a belated warning, the current Watergate would never give Chikishoto any chance to summon the 2 Rakudo doppelganger that were held back by Nangongja. For a while, Pain Rakudo was directly trapped in a deadlock because of the mistakes in the strategic deployment. It seemed that everything was going in the direction of failure. Watergate looked at Chikishoto and once again used his Flying Thunder God technique to come to Chikishoto Pain's side. Together with his Senjutsu Rasengan, he directly beat Chikishoto Pain until he lost his combat power. Looking at Chikishoto Pain and Gekido Pain who fell beside him, and then looking at Gekido Pain who had turned into a stone frog, Watergate was a little dazed. Everything was going too smoothly. As long as he could break the King of Hell's face summoned by Jigakudo Pain and directly eliminate Tendo Pain in it, then go to Nangongja's side and kill the last 2 Rakudo doppelganger and the damn person who released Ninetales back then, this farce of invading with Leaf would end. It's just a pity that the Wood Leaf civilians and ninjas sacrificed when Pain used Super Shinra Tensei. Thinking of this, Watergate's eyes were also uncontrollably full of anger, and the chakra in his body also surged quickly. A Rasengan was produced in Watergate's hand. Watergate kept pouring his Senjutsu chakra and Futon chakra into the Rasengan in his hand. A large number of chakra poured into the Rasengan, and the Rasengan continued to expand. But unlike the Odama Rasengan used by Watergate's Shadow Clone before, the Rasengan in Watergate's hand at this moment was not simply expanding, but was constantly being molded and expanded. As Watergate slowly raised his hand above his head, a huge four-leaf pinwheel chakra, shuriken, appeared in Watergate's hand. This was the ninjutsu that Watergate and Naruto developed together before, which contained chakra's transformation and qualitative change. Senjutsu, Futon, Raisin Shuriken. The huge Raisin Shuriken in Watergate's hand immediately flew out of Watergate's hand under the wave of his arm, shooting straight in the direction of King of Hell's Fae. First destroy King of Hell's Fae, then destroy Tendo Pain in it? This is too troublesome and a waste of time, isn't it? So Watergate decided to directly destroy both. Chapter 490. Jiraiya, who was at the outermost edge of the battlefield, watched his disciple defeat his other disciples' 6 clones one by one. His heart that had been hanging began to slowly relax, but he didn't know why he had mixed feelings in his heart. This was a battle of life and death between his 2 disciples. Any sensei who saw such a battle couldn't keep their inner calm, right? After the huge storm caused by the Raisin Shuriken attack dissipated, Watergate glanced at the place where Pluton's summon was originally located. After judging that Pluton's summon and Tendo Pain had been completely destroyed, he slowly walked to Jiraiya's side. He helped Jiraiya, who was sitting on the ground, up and said with a little concern, "Jiraiya-sensei, are your injuries okay?" With the help of Minato, Jiraiya finally stood up. He looked at his arms and legs, nodded to Minato, and said with a little bitterness, "I'm sorry, but I can't do that." "Not bad. At least I saved my life." Watergate was not a professional medical ninja, but after such a long battle, he also had a certain amount of common sense in judging injuries. Jiraiya's left arm and right leg were now instinctively trembling because of the injury. This was the situation after the tendons and veins were severely damaged. After hearing Watergate's inquiry, the little slug attached to Jiraiya's body also said to Watergate with a little worry, "Jiraiya-sama's injuries are still not very optimistic, although he has just received a lot of medical chakra to control the injuries." But the tendons and veins of his left arm and right leg were greatly damaged because of the previous battle with pain. There is no way to completely determine whether it could be completely healed by such remote treatment. So, I suggest Watergate-sama immediately bring Jiraiya-sama to Tsunade-sama for treatment. After all, Slug is a psychic beast who has lived for a long time, and she has also healed many injuries with Tsunade, so her understanding in this regard is far beyond Watergate and Jiraiya. After hearing Slug's words, Watergate didn't hesitate at all. He put his hand on Jiraiya's shoulder and immediately used Flying Thunder God Jutsu to move in the direction of Kiba Hospital. Looking at the sudden appearance of Jiraiya and Watergate, Tsunade, who had been treating the injured patients in Kiba Hospital, also immediately stopped her continuous chakra. Looking at Tsunade's unsealed seal and her somewhat old face, it was obvious that she had divided a lot of chakra in her body. Her whole body has fallen into a state of alert. Watergate just wanted to say something, but Tsunade had already walked to Watergate's side and replaced Watergate to support Jiraiya. With the medical chakra covering her hand, Tsunade carefully examined Jiraiya's body. Of course, the left arm and right leg that seemed to be the most seriously injured were also explored by Tsunade. Tsunade's tired face frowned slightly at this moment. Obviously, Jiraiya's injury was not so ideal. Looking at Jiraiya, sitting on the ground with a cheeky smile as usual, she didn't know why the anger and sadness in her heart slowly dissipated after checking Jiraiya's injury just now. Although Tsunade's face has become a little old because of the unsealing of seal, at this moment, Tsunade looked so beautiful with a little pain, a little relief, and a little complaint. That kind of beauty is not a coquettish beauty, but a kind of beauty accumulated over the years. This kind of beauty was naturally seen by Jiraiya, and in Jiraiya's eyes, this kind of beauty was infinitely magnified. Jiraiya stretched out one of his hands and gently hugged Tsunade in his arms. Although he didn't speak, everything looked so beautiful. Tsunade stretched out her hand and didn't use the strange force she always used. Instead, she gently knocked on Jiraiya's forehead and said to Jiraiya with a bit of reproach, "You're still the same as when you were young. You shouldn't show off when you shouldn't. Look at what you've done now." In fact, when watching Watergate and Pain fight before, Jiraiya also explored his body to a certain extent. Although when Watergate asked, Jiraiya kept saying that it was no big deal, Jiraiya knew that his left arm and right leg were completely unable to pass through the chakra at this moment. He couldn't even use his strength to move them. Although Tsunade's medical ninjutsu is very powerful, there is no way to disperse the special power of Rinnegan that has been blocking his veins and destroying his body. His left arm and right leg are actually completely useless at this moment. Even if Tsunade does her best to treat him, she can only save his left arm and right leg. If he is lucky, his left arm and right leg may be restored to the level of a normal person. But want to continue to walk in the ninja world as a ninja? Don't think about such a thing. In short, Jiraiya is useless. Although Watergate, who was standing on the side, heard a little vague, he had vaguely guessed Jiraiya's physical condition. Although it was difficult to accept, Watergate couldn't help but feel a little lucky for Jiraiya. After all, his long ninja career is finally over, and his sensei can finally live a normal life. In fact, it's not a bad thing. Watergate once again launched his Flying Thunder God Jutsu and left his sensei and Tsunade's side. Such a sad but somewhat fortunate environment. Watergate couldn't accept it. And now there are two Rakudo-esque doppelgangers active in the Woodleaf area, and the bastard who released the Nine Tails is also nearby. Watergate can't be at ease if he doesn't defeat these two Rakudo-esque doppelgangers and kill the bastard with a mask. Jiraiya also said before that Pain Rakudo is not the real leader of Akatsuki. It's just Nagato's doppelgangers who use the power of his Rinnegan. Nagato should be controlling his Rakudo-esque doppelgangers near the Woodleaf area at this moment. If possible, Watergate also hopes that he can kill Nagato directly. If Akatsuki can collapse, it would be great. Even if Akatsuki doesn't collapse because of this, it will also suffer a huge blow. Why not? Chapter 491. Nangong's Calamity sword was constantly being used by Nangongja as he withstood the barrage of bullets from Shiradao Pain. Some of these sword techniques were found and practiced by Nangongja from the ancient books of the Bloodcloak Pavilion. Some of them were developed by Nangongja based on his many years of combat experience. The swordsmanship he learned from the ancient records was indeed very exquisite. However, no matter how Nangongja memorized the swordsmanship in his heart and applied it to his fingers, he still felt a sense of discomfort. The sword techniques that Nangongja developed himself were slightly inferior to the ancient books of the Bloodcloak Pavilion in terms of flexibility, but they were very smooth in Nangongja's hands. It had been a long time since Nangongja fought with experts who were on par with him. Although he could slowly figure out some things about cultivation, these things could only be maximized in actual combat. Now standing opposite of Nangongja, Mortal Realm Pain and Azura Realm Pain were the test stones that Nangongja had found for himself. These two enemies had both melee and long-range attacks. Moreover, they were telepathic with each other and cooperated closely with each other. They were the best enemies to test the results of his swordsmanship. As for Hoodlum, he didn't dare to move casually now. After fighting for so long, Hoodlum finally understood that Nangongja and Pain already had a tacit understanding between them. As long as the other party didn't leave the battlefield, they would never fight to the death. Although the situation on the battlefield seemed to be fierce, in fact, both sides had not used their full strength. Just now, when Nangongja was fighting with Pain, all of his sword chi had been withdrawn into his heavenly tribulation sword. Most of the time, he relied on the sharpness of the Calamity sword to fight with Pain. When Hoodlum was about to intervene, sword chi rushed out from Nangongja's Calamity sword one after another. Countless sword chi directly wrapped Hoodlum in the sword chi sword formation. Hoodlum didn't even dare to use his spatial ninjutsu. After that, Nangongja integrated the heavenly punishment aura in his longsword into the sword formation. Hoodlum had suffered a lot from this, and in the end, he had to threaten Pain before he could escape. Nangong's wrist shook, and the Calamity sword in his hand instantly drew a charming sword mark in the air. The heavenly Calamity sword seemed to have come alive. It swiftly and nimbly slashed towards Pain of the human realm, who was about to slap Nangong's face with his hands open. In Nangong's guess, after seeing the sharpness of the Calamity sword in his hand, Pain would definitely choose to temporarily dodge or use his skills to deflect the Calamity sword in his hand. But at this moment, Pain changed his appearance. Instead, he was like a professional berserker. Even if he was hit by Nangong's sword, he must hit Nangong's body with his hand. His originally cold and indifferent eyes at this moment became more human-like after receiving more psychic force from Nagato. The eagerness from the depths of his heart seemed to be gushing out from his eyes. And seemingly understanding that his companion was attacking, Pain naturally opened all the big and small muzzles on his body and fired all the bullets at Nangong's. In this way, Nangong's spaced to dodge and force Nangong's to confront Nangong's head-on. Why were the Six Paths doppelgangers of Pain so eager to help? Why were they acting like they didn't put in any effort just now? Although Nangong's didn't know the reason, Nangong's knew that he must not hold back too much now. Otherwise, he will definitely lose. Tisk! A sound of displeasure came from his mouth. Nangong's eyes began to narrow slightly. His originally handsome eyes at this moment seemed to be covered with a layer of dark red luster. Although his pupils were still black, bursts of dark red light were constantly emitted. Nangong's pair of sword-like eyebrows were slightly raised at this moment, just like the sword in his hand, slightly raised, full of aggressiveness. If people who were familiar with Nangong's, such as Nangong-ro, Mashiro, and Little Linger, appeared here, they may not necessarily think that this person full of violent aura is the usual amiable and gentle family member. But if it was a ninja who fought against Nangong's in the Shinobi World War, or when Nangong's was on a mission, there would be few witnesses who saw Nangong's current appearance. Most of them would definitely look at Nangong's with trembling legs and a face full of fear, and then from their throats, they would squeeze out the name Woodleaf-yama that belonged to Nangong's. Although the sword in his hand was about to attack Rendo's body, and he was about to be hit by Rendo's reckless attack. But Nangong's seemed to be completely unmoved. Although his momentum changed in an instant, the attack route of the sword in his hand did not change at all. Got it! Got it! Got it! Seeing that his hands were about to hit Nangong's body, as long as Rendo's ability was fully activated, no matter how terrifying his physical cultivation was, his soul would be extracted. And no matter how strong a person's soul was, once it lost the support of the physical body, there was nothing to be afraid of, right? 10 centimeters, 8 centimeters, 7 centimeters. Poochie! The sword in Nangong's hand had already pierced through Rendo's shoulder blade, but Rendo was completely unmoved. After all, the Six Paths of Pain was transformed from a corpse, and there was no such thing as pain. Rendo adjusted a little and still bombarded his palm towards Nangong's, as if he wanted to die together with him. 5 centimeters, 3 centimeters, 2 centimeters. Seeing that there was only a little distance between his palm and Nangong's body, Rendo found that there was something between his palm and Nangong's body. Nangong's, who was originally holding the Heavenly Disaster Sword with one hand, had unknowingly placed his other hand on the hilt of the Heavenly Disaster Sword. With a mocking smile at the corner of his mouth, Nangong's poured a large amount of internal strength into the sword to stimulate the power of the sword. Chapter 492. With the infusion of a large amount of internal force, the Heaven's Disaster Sword also spontaneously triggered the natural energy contained in the air around it. With the Heaven's Punishment aura contained in its body as a primer, a large amount of internal force and natural energy were converted into Black Heaven's Punishment thunder. Bolts of black lightning constantly surged on the Tribulation Sword and poured into Pain's body for a long time. The destructive Heaven's Punishment thunder constantly destroyed Pain's body and these Heaven's Punishment Thunder also spread from the Heaven's Disaster Sword to Nangongjia's body. After being with the Heaven's Disaster Sword for many years, Nangongja also had an extremely high resistance to the Heaven's Punishment Thunder contained in it. For a period of time, he could still withstand the effects of the Heaven's Punishment Thunder wandering in his body, but pain was different. A large amount of Heaven's Punishment Thunder was injected into his body, directly causing Pain's body to begin to carbonize from the inside out. In just a few seconds, the surface of Pain's body also became a layer of char black. Nangongja stopped his continuous infusion of internal force, and the thunder surging on the Heaven's Disaster Sword also dissipated as Nangongja withdrew his internal force. Pulling out his Heaven's Disaster Sword from the charred body of Pain, Nangongja mercilessly kicked Pain's body. Pain's body was like fragile glass, and it was directly shattered by Nangongja's kick. Pieces of charred residue of different sizes were scattered all over the ground, as if proving the existence of pain in the human realm. Hoodlum, who had been wandering on the side, had already noticed that something was wrong when he saw Pain suddenly start to fight desperately. He quietly prepared for space teleportation, when Nangongja cleanly turned Pain into a pile of residue on the ground. Hoodlum also made a prompt decision to directly use his space ninjutsu, and his figure disappeared in an instant. After seeing that Pain was defeated and Hoodlum escaped, Shuradao Pain immediately prepared to retreat. Pain's 6 paths must not all be lost in the woodleaf. Nangongja looked at Shuradao Pain's departing figure, but he had no intention of pursuing. Just now, the act of using Heaven's Punishment Thunder to attack Pain was still somewhat beyond Nangongja's expectations, although it was only a few milliseconds that were negligible to ordinary people. However, Nangongja's body was also slightly paralyzed at the moment because of Heaven's Punishment Thunder. There was no way he could use his speed to chase Shuradao Pain. Just when Nangongja thought that Shuradao Pain would escape, a golden figure suddenly appeared not far from Shuradao Pain. The person who came was Yandame Watergate, who came to support Nangongja. He threw a special 3-pointed kunai in his hand towards Shuradao Pain's side. Shuradao Pain, who had already used up all his kunai, had almost no power to fight back. He raised his arm and used the remaining chakra in his body to drive his fist away from his body. He wanted to hit the kunai that Watergate shot towards him. However, Watergate's movements were faster than Shuradao Pain's movements. He quickly used his flying Thunder God Jutsu, and Watergate's figure had already reached the side of the kunai that he just threw out. Watergate held the kunai in his hand and once again threw it towards Shuradao Pain's side. Watergate's figure flickered a few times as the kunai flew, and his figure was already close to Shuradao Pain. He quickly formed a Rasengan in his hand and directly pressed it towards Shuradao Pain's body. It seems that an ordinary Rasengan can't kill Shuradao Pain. Watergate's empty hand also formed a Rasengan almost instantly, and then pressed it towards Shuradao Pain's body. Rasengan attacked Shuradao Pain's body one after another. Shuradao Pain didn't know whether he suffered a dozen or 20 Rasengan attacks in succession, but his body became full of holes. Like a broken doll, Shuradao Pain fell directly to the ground. After confirming that Shuradao Pain was dead, Watergate used the body flicker technique to appear beside Nangongja. Slightly cupping his hand towards Nangongja, Watergate said to Nangongja, "This time, thanks to you blocking Pain's 2 Rakuto doppelgangers and the masked man, otherwise, Woodleaf would have suffered more losses." Facing Watergate's gratitude, Nangongja didn't show any special emotions. After all, in terms of identity, Nangongja is the head of the powerful Bloodcloak Pavilion, and Watergate is the Hokage of Woodleaf. They can almost be regarded as people of the same status. Although Nangongja lives in Woodleaf, he has long been separated from Woodleaf, so Nangongja doesn't have to bow to Watergate. So Nangongja just waved his hand casually, and then said to Watergate, "It's nothing, it's just a small matter. If it weren't for these guys who didn't know what's good for them and even threatened me with my family, I wouldn't have killed them like this." Pain's Rakuto doppelganger is just the power on the surface. The real enemy needs to be dealt with by Sandaime Hokage. The speaker has the intention. The listener has the intention. Nangong's words meant to tell Watergate. The reason why he fought with two of Pain's Rakuto doppelgangers is just because these guys put their own guns on his muzzle. I also know about Nagato standing behind Pain's Rakuto doppelganger, but I don't intend to participate in it. Such a thing to eradicate the enemy for with Leaf shouldn't be done by someone like me who just wants to protect his own family. You should solve it by yourself. After all, Watergate is a person who has been in a high position for many years, so he immediately understood Nangong's meaning. Although Nangong's words were very disrespectful, Watergate is not the kind of childish child who shows his emotions on his face. He really has no position, and there is no reason for Nangongja to accompany him to eliminate Nagato, although he can pay some price to let Nangongja act with him. But as a Kage-level powerhouse, as it would Leaf Hokage, Watergate will never allow Nangongja to act like this. It's just a trivial Nagato. Don't you have a way to deal with it? Chapter 493. Seeing that Minato seemed to have understood his intentions, Nangongja didn't stay any longer. Instead, he walked in the direction of his home. His sister Nangongja, Mishiro, and Little Linger are still in the secret room at the moment, waiting for the news of his safety. In Nangongja's heart, the ninja world, Pain, and Nagato are all not as important as his family. Nangongja's figure slowly disappeared in front of his eyes, and Watergate walked to the side of Shura Du Pain, who was just beaten into a sieve by him. Pulling out a black iron rod from the bloody body of Shura Du Pain, Watergate instantly began to absorb the natural energy floating in the air. After harmonizing with the physical energy and spiritual energy that already existed in his body, Watergate's eyes have become orange pupils and red eyeshadow after using Sage Mode. Injecting the Senjutsu chakra in his body into the iron rod, Watergate instantly confirmed the location of Nagato through the connection between the iron rod and Nagato himself. Throwing the trident in his hand again and again, Minato arrived at the place where Conan and Nagato were hiding in a tall tree, created by Conan's paper release in just a few seconds. Conan and Nagato in the giant tree also quickly noticed Watergate's uninvited attack. Conan raised her foot, obviously wanting to fight with Watergate to buy time for Nagato to evacuate. But just as Conan was about to go out, Nagato raised his hand and blocked Conan. The previous battle with Pain Rakuto obviously consumed a lot of Nagato's strength, and now Nagato looked a little tired. But it was not to the point of exhaustion, so although Conan didn't understand why Nagato didn't let her fight, she still listened to Nagato's words. She gently waved her hand, and the pieces of paper that were disguised as trees fluttered in the air. A hole big enough for one person to pass through appeared on the trunk. Watergate didn't hesitate and walked directly in front of Nagato. Instead of the expected hostility, Watergate looked at Nagato's long red hair and skinny body with a little curiosity. Smiling slightly, as if to show his kindness, Watergate said to Nagato and Conan, "Two brothers and sisters. Although you and I have never met, I have heard a lot about you from Jiraiya-sensei. Today, we can finally meet. I don't know whether to be happy or sad." Watergate said what was in his heart. Although Watergate was not very familiar with Nagato and Conan, the three of them were Jiraiya's apprentices after all. With such a relationship, there was no way to treat each other with the attitude of treating strangers. Looking at Watergate, standing opposite the two of them with a face full of emotion, Conan, who didn't seem to be so good at talking, still had a frosty look, but Nagato rarely talked to Watergate. So what if you were sad? So what if you were happy? Although you and I are from the same sect, the life we have experienced is completely different. You have lived in the stable wood leaf since you were a child. Although you went to the battlefield at a young age, you also fought with a group of people who also came from Woodleaf. And we, the orphans of war, can only hold the broken piece of wood in the whirlpool of war to prevent ourselves from being completely involved and crushed. I have always been grateful to Jiraiya-sensei for letting me, Conan, and Yahiko learn ninjutsu by his side. If it weren't for Jiraiya Sensei, we would have died long ago. However, I don't think that what I did was wrong, because destroying a small piece of illusory paradise and then making the whole ninja world a real place without war, a quiet and peaceful place, isn't such an exchange cost-effective? Why do you want to refuse? Originally, when Watergate saw that Nagato could talk to him, Watergate's heart inevitably showed a touch of joy. Although Nagato did destroy a large part of Woodleaf, and many people were seriously injured or even lost their lives under Nagato's attack, but with timely rescue and evacuation, such people accounted for a small number of people. As a Hokage, the most important thing to do is not to let your emotions overwhelm your reason. He needs to consider not only his own feelings, but also the interests of Woodleaf. As long as Nagato was willing to communicate with him, Watergate felt that he had a great chance to persuade Nagato to turn over a new leaf. But listening to Nagato's words, did he have the slightest awareness of his own wrongdoings? Even now, you still refuse to come to your senses. Do you still think that there is nothing wrong with your actions? The smile on Watergate's face gradually solidified, and a burst of killing intent also escaped from Watergate's body. Feeling Watergate's killing intent, Conan also surrounded herself with a lot of white papers, obviously planning to attack Watergate before Watergate did. After hearing Watergate's words, Nagato, who was questioned by Watergate, became more indifferent and silent. Wrong? I don't make mistakes. I'm the one who inherited the eyes of the Rakuto Sennin. I'm a god walking in the world. The decisions I make are never wrong. On the contrary, they are the best choice for the shinobi world. Whether it's with Leaf or other ninja villages, they keep saying that they love peace. But which one of the 3 great ninja wars didn't start between the 5 great ninja villages? Because of your conflicts of interest, the entire ninja world is dragged into the quagmire of war. Isn't that wrong? In that case, it's better to let me trigger a more large-scale war, and then let everyone see the great power that they can't disobey. Succumbing to power, fearing power, only such power can truly bring peace to the shinobi world. With that said, Nagato's eyes were filled with a fanatical emotion. Watergate knew that even if he said more, there was no way to change Nagato's mind. The only thing he could do was to defeat Nagato and Conan, who were standing opposite him at the moment. Chapter 494. The atmosphere between the two sides instantly became tense. Watergate's body exuded a powerful aura, and the Senjutsu chakra almost overflowed from Watergate's body. The white flame-lined Haori on Watergate's body was fluttering in the wind. Watergate directly teleported to Nagato's side, and a Rasengan immediately appeared in Watergate's palm. He pressed the Rasengan in his hand towards Nagato's body, but a layer of invisible shield protected Nagato, so the Rasengan in Watergate's hand couldn't hurt Nagato at all. As the holder of the Rinnegan, known as the Sages, Nagato wasn't a weak waste after losing his 6 paths of pain. On the contrary, it was the Rinnegan that gave Nagato the most powerful power. The power of the Rinnegan was the real Sage's eye. At this moment, the shield that Nagato used belonged to the power of the outer path. Such a shield was somewhat similar to the Hyuga's gentle fist, revolving heaven, but compared to the power of the Rinnegan, the shield displayed by the Rinnegan has a super strong defensive ability with no blind spots. Conan's hands were also quickly forming hand seals, and a ninjutsu was instantly cast by Conan. Paper release. Infinite paper shuriken jutsu. A piece of white paper turned into a sharp shuriken under Conan's control and attacked in the direction of Watergate. At first, Watergate used the Sanjiu in his hand to block some of the shurikens flying towards him, so that he could continue to attack Nagato. After all, in Watergate's view, no matter how strong the shield was, there was a limit. As long as his attack power rose to a certain level, any shield would be forcibly broken. But when Watergate saw that the shurikens that he hit with the Sanjiu fell to the ground, they immediately turned into a piece of white paper and flew back to Conan's side. Under Conan's control, they turned back into shurikens and shot towards him. Watergate knew that he couldn't passively take the attack. Wave after wave of continuous attacks would gradually numb his spirit, which had been passively defending, and numb his nerves would definitely lead to him being at a disadvantage under such continuous attacks. So Watergate immediately used his body to retreat, letting himself out of the attack range of the paper release, Infinite Paper Shuriken. After seeing Watergate retreat, she also stopped her Infinite Paper Shuriken Jutsu. The paper that turned into paper shurikens turned back into a piece of white paper suspended beside Conan. Conan casually waved her hand, and a white paper pillar wrapped in white paper appeared beside Conan. It was so white that it almost looked like a human. Conan looked at Nagato beside her, with a questioning look in her eyes. Obviously, this human-like object, wrapped in white paper, was very meaningful to both Conan and Nagato. After a short silence, Nagato also nodded to Conan, seeming to have made a decision. After receiving Nagato's instructions, Conan's hand waved elegantly, like a conductor in a concert. Pieces of white paper continued to fall from such a humanoid white paper pillar. As the white paper continued to fall, the humanoid figure hidden in the white paper finally revealed his appearance. He had short orange hair, special eyes formed by ripples, and black metal rod-like ornaments on his face and body. This person hidden in the white paper was Pain Tendo, who Watergate thought was destroyed by the Senjutsu, Wind Release, Raisin Shuriken together with Yamasummon. From the looks of it, he was saved by his junior sister, Xiaonan, who used the paper escape technique. To be able to save someone from the Raisin Shuriken, although Conan was a woman, it was enough to see that she wasn't simple. However, although Pain Tendo was rescued, it was obvious that his condition wasn't so good. Although the place hit by Watergate's Yin-Yang Raisin Shuriken was slightly repaired, it seemed that it was just a superficial wound, and the flesh around the wound looked so fragile. Watergate finally understood why Conan and Nagato hesitated when he released Pain Tendo. After all, Pain Tendo was his other junior brother and also Conan and Nagato's close friend, Yahiko's body. According to the current situation, if he used Pain Tendo to fight with him, then naturally, he couldn't avoid serious injuries because of the battle. But if he didn't use Pain Tendo, then Nagato and Conan, who didn't have outstanding attack power, wouldn't be enough to directly defeat Watergate, who was a powerful ninja in the world. Obviously, at this moment, Conan and Nagato were ready to fight Watergate to the end, even if they lost Pain Tendo. Looking at Pain Tendo, Nagato, and Conan standing together, Watergate couldn't help but be in a trance. In the past, these three people, with their own strength, pulled up the Akatsuki in the Rain Country. Although he was a little emotional, Minato didn't slack off in the slightest. After all, no matter what the three people opposite him experienced, for Watergate and Woodleaf, they were destined to be enemies. It was because of these people opposite him that Woodleaf Ninja Village was almost completely destroyed, and who knows how many Woodleaf civilians and ninjas were injured and killed in such an attack. Watergate would never allow himself to forgive such people who have become Woodleaf's enemies because of his personal feelings. Being ruthless to the enemy is the rule that Watergate has always followed and is not allowed to be violated. Feeling that the Senjutsu chakra in his body had become a little exhausted, Watergate directly removed 2 of the 9 shadow clones he left in Mount Mayaboku. Although the accumulated fatigue of the shadow clones directly impacted Watergate's consciousness, a large amount of Senjutsu chakra was also refined by the shadow clones and poured into Watergate's body. Fight! Since this is an unavoidable battle, then he will do his best to avenge Woodleaf for the dead civilians and ninjas. This kind of emotion constantly produced in Watergate's heart, and this kind of emotion also constantly stimulated the fighting spirit in Watergate's heart. He must do his best to kill the enemy standing opposite him in his own hands. Chapter 495. Connecting his consciousness with Tendo Pain, Nagato was also ready to fight. In the previous battle with Watergate, in fact, Tendo Pain did not exert his most powerful strength. Now is the time for Tendo Pain to show his sharpness. Bansho Tenshin. Tendo Pain opened his palm. Unlike the Shinra Tensei that Watergate had suffered before, a powerful gravitational force that was opposite to the repulsive force instantly acted on Watergate's body. Unlike the previous battle, Watergate did not cover a large area of his battlefield with his Trident Kunai, so the use of Flying Thunder God Jutsu was also limited. If he used Body Flicker, this kind of gravitational force directly made it impossible to use Body Flicker. Therefore, Watergate's body was uncontrollably attracted by Tendo Pain. Conan watched Watergate's body being attracted by Tendo Pain and quickly used her paper release, God's Origami Jutsu, to control the white paper to form a pair of huge wings behind her. Unlike the wings used to fly before, this time the wings formed by Conan through paper release, God's Origami Jutsu, were thinner and sharper. Lowering her body slightly, Conan looked at the position of Watergate, and Tendo Pain also stopped his Bansho Tenshin at the right time and directly waved his arm. The white paper wings behind him also slashed fiercely in the direction of Watergate with Conan's arm. Looking at the white paper wings slashing towards him, Watergate also saw how sharp such an attack was. He tried his best to control his body, holding the Trident Kunai and using the inertia brought by gravity to collide with Conan's wing slash. Although Watergate's own Trident Kunai was made of special materials, it was slightly weaker against Conan's wings. After slightly resisting Conan's wing chop, Watergate's sturdy three-pointed kunai in his hand was directly cut in two. But this brief resistance gave Watergate a chance to dodge. He tilted his body slightly and dodged Conan's wing attack. Taking advantage of the inertia on his body, Watergate directly used Body Blink to appear beside Pain. Shinra Tensei. Seeing that Watergate wanted to fight in close combat with himself, Tendo Pain also unambiguously used Shinra Tensei to send Watergate flying. Watergate already knew that Shinra Tensei had a cooldown. Nagato and Conan knew it, but Nagato still controlled Tendo Pain to cast Shinra Tensei. Obviously, he was ready to deal with Watergate's attack. Conan, who had just used Wing Chop, obviously also consumed a lot of chakra, so at this moment Conan obviously had no way to cast a very powerful ninjutsu. The key to everything seemed to fall on Nagato, and Nagato, as Watergate thought, directly began to print on his chest, and chakra on his body was constantly surging. Even because of the large amount of chakra in his body, Nagato's body was a little overwhelmed, and a mouthful of blood spurted directly from Nagato's mouth. When Conan, who was wandering on the side, saw Nagato so desperate, there was an inevitable look of worry in her eyes. But this ninjutsu that consumed a lot of chakra was not cast by Nagato's hand. Instead, it was Tendo Pain who slowly put his hands together. It seemed that it was a little difficult to open his closed palms, and a black sphere about the size of a ping-pong ball appeared. An inexplicable, terrifying aura escaped from such a small black sphere. With a push of his palm, a powerful gravitational force was directly generated from the small black sphere, and Tendo Pain and Nagato said the name of this technique in unison, Chibaku Tensei. The small black sphere passed by Watergate, and the powerful gravitational force directly acted on Watergate's body. Watergate's body almost flew into the sky with the sphere. Under the attraction of the black sphere, huge rocks and huge trees were directly pulled over. Looking at Watergate, who still didn't seem to struggle, Nagato said very coldly, "Give up struggling. You can't resist such a ninjutsu. This ninjutsu is the most powerful ninjutsu brought to me by Sage Eyes. Even the moon in the sky was created by this ninjutsu. Just relying on your mortal body, how can you resist such a power that doesn't belong to mortals?" Although Nagato didn't speak loudly, his voice was still clearly transmitted to Watergate's ears through Chakra's amplification. Watergate wanted to say something to refute Nagato, but a huge stone flew towards Watergate. Watergate could only quickly condense a Rasengan in his hand to smash the stone flying towards him. However, after the rock was smashed, it turned into small pieces of stone. The small size and the strong gravitational force that did not change made the stone move even faster. An ordinary stone has become as threatening as a shuriken thrown by a ninja at this moment. And Watergate's body was also very difficult to control because of the gravitational force from the black sphere. The stone directly hit Watergate's body. Even if Watergate was in sage mode, he still suffered a certain degree of injury. And such an injury, under the strong gravitational environment, naturally accelerated the bleeding. Although sage mode can make Watergate's wound heal quickly, even a short period of time before the healing, a lot of blood gushed out. Pieces of rocks and trees kept flying towards the place where the small black sphere was located. It didn't take long for Watergate's body to be completely wrapped by these rocks and trees. A sphere that was almost a miniature version of an asteroid was suspended in the sky, looking very imposing. Casting Chibaku Tensei was also a huge burden for Nagato. After feeling that Watergate had been completely wrapped in it and was squeezed for a while, Nagato also released his control of Chibaku Tensei. Like a meteorite falling, the huge sphere formed by Chibaku Tensei fell directly from the sky. A huge shockwave far beyond the previous Shinra Tensei cast by Tendo Pain was directly generated, as if the world was shaking because of such a fall. Chapter 496. A scene like a natural disaster was created by Pain's ninjutsu. The huge crater on the ground and the smoke in the sky proved how powerful such an impact was. Even though Minato barely managed to survive the black gravitational sphere, it was still unknown whether he could keep his life after receiving such a huge impact. Although Nagato has full confidence in his Chibaku Tensei, he still wants to see with his own eyes whether a powerful enemy like Minato really lost his life under such a blow. Enduring the discomfort in his body, he quickly completed a ninjutsu. Nagato pushed his hand in front of his body, and a huge gust of wind appeared. Wind release, great breakthrough. Although it was just a simple C-class ninjutsu, in the hands of Nagato, such a low-level ninjutsu showed the power to turn something rotten into something magical. The strong wind blew towards the place where the smoke was, and the thick smoke was almost all blown away by the wind in an instant. In the middle of the smoke, a figure fell to the ground. The white Haori with flames on his body had become tattered at this moment, and Watergate's face was also gray, and there was even a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. Although Watergate's eyes were bloodshot, and his body was tattered, and many places were even stained with blood, at this moment, Watergate was obviously not defeated by Pain's blow. How is this possible? This is the strongest ninjutsu belonging to the Sage's Eye. Nagato looked at Watergate standing in the middle of the crater, and for a moment, he was in a trance. After all, the impact of such a scene on Nagato was too great. Chibaku Tensei was a ninjutsu used by the Rakudo Sannin to seal the Jubi and create the moon. Although there was still a certain gap between his strength and the legendary Rakudo Sannin, Nagato believed that he had just used 10 or 20% of the power of Chibaku Tensei. Even so, there was no way to get rid of Watergate. In Nagato's mind, such a situation was simply unachievable. Watergate, who was standing in the middle of the crater, did not feel good either. After all, the power of the Chibaku Tensei was real. After being controlled by gravity, Watergate had been subjected to the impact of the boulders and trees on the ground, as well as the strong pressure generated by the gravity combined with the debris on the surface. In order to ensure that his body did not suffer too much damage, Watergate had almost exhausted all the shadow clones he had left in Mount Mayaboku. But at the same time, a large number of chakra immortal techniques from his shadow clones allowed Watergate to survive the powerful pressure and the subsequent impact, and even retain a certain amount of combat strength. On the contrary, Nagato and Pain had become injured, and they had almost lost too much combat ability. Conan, who was not so outstanding among the three, had to take on the main combat task at this moment. Although Conan's paper release was very strange and had many wonderful uses, in the end, it still had some disadvantages. For Watergate, it was not very strong in defense and attack, and although Conan could control the paper with ease, but because of the limitations of the paper itself, she could not be very fast and fierce. Such shortcomings may not be so obvious when facing other enemies, but when facing Namake's Minato, who was known for his speed, it was enough to become a fatal weakness. Just when Nagato was still carefully staring at Watergate, standing in the crater, and thinking about how to deal with it, Watergate's figure suddenly disappeared. In the next moment, Watergate was already standing near Nagato, holding a Rasengan mixed with Senjutsu chakra in his hand, and directly pressed it on the black seat-like thing with rollers under Nagato's body. This black seat itself was made by Nagato with his own Rinnegan and chakra. It was the same thing used by Rakudo's clone to transmit spiritual force and Chakra's iron rod. Naturally, it had a defensive power beyond ordinary ninja tools. But at this moment, under the attack of Rasengan in Watergate's hand, it seemed a little fragile. Under the powerful attack, pieces of black debris floated in the air, and these things were originally specially made by Nagato to control Pain's Rakudo. Now that they were directly blown into pieces by Watergate, they naturally lost their original role. Tendo Pain, who was standing on the side, was like a puppet that had lost the control of Chakra's threads at this moment, and he collapsed on the ground. Conan watched Nagato fly out directly, and finally, she couldn't maintain the coldness on her face. With a face full of anxiety and worry, Conan urged the wings behind her in the direction of Nagato and quickly rushed in the direction of Nagato. But how could Watergate let Conan come to the side of Nagato, who had almost lost his ability to move, so he directly took out 2 Sanjiu kunai from his ninja tool bag, one in the direction of Nagato, and the other in the direction of Conan. His hands quickly formed a hand seal, and a shadow clone in the same sage mode stood beside Watergate. Watergate and Shadow Clone were telepathically connected, so there was no need for too many words, and Watergate and Shadow Clone immediately took action. Shadow Clone used Flying Thunder God Jutsu to come to the path that Conan must pass to Nagato. Watergate didn't allocate so much chakra to Shadow Clone, only less than 1/3 of chakra. But after all, Shadow Clone is not a real life, so there are fewer taboos in the battle. Watergate wants his Shadow Clone to do its best to block Conan, so that Conan can't come to Nagato's rescue. Watergate's main body also used Flying Thunder God Jutsu to come to Nagato's side at this moment. Watergate bent down and took the Sanjiu kunai inserted in the ground as a space coordinate in his hand, then slowly walked to Nagato's side and said with a little emotion, "I have always asked myself to be an upright person, but I didn't expect that one day I would face my junior brother and sister with a weapon and fight with our lives. What a sad thing." Nagato, who fell to the ground, raised his head and looked at Watergate standing in front of him. Although he has been lamenting how he didn't want to kill his fellow disciples, the hidden coldness in Watergate's eyes and the sharpness of the Sanjiu kunai in his hand all told Nagato that in fact, Watergate had already decided to leave his life in the land of Woodleaf. Sure enough, this world is a filthy world full of selfish people and sanctimonious people. Chapter 497. Although Nagato's eyes made Minato's heart very uncomfortable, such a look of contempt and pity would make anyone feel uncomfortable. But who would care so much about a dead person? Nagato's life was now in Watergate's hands. Watergate squatted down and put the Sanjikin in his hand on Nagato's neck. The sharp edge pressed on Nagato's skin, and even drops of blood oozed out of Nagato's skin. Looking at Nagato's dangerous situation at this moment, Conan on the side shouted loudly, "No, don't do this." Drops of tears oozed out of Conan's eyes. Her beautiful face was like a pear blossom in the rain at this moment, and such beauty made people feel particularly distressed. But Watergate's clone, who was fighting with Conan, didn't have any intention of showing mercy at all. Instead, his moves were fierce and ruthless, forcing Conan to be unable to take a step forward. "Go in peace. Use your life as compensation for destroying the Woodleaf, and taking the lives of countless civilians and ninjas. Watergate's eyes flashed with a trace of fierceness, and his wrist was also about to directly cut Nagato's neck and take away the only life of such a self-proclaimed god. However, a familiar and somewhat powerless voice suddenly rang out. "Watergate, don't do this. Leave Nagato's life." This voice was very familiar to Watergate, and it was also familiar to Nagato and Conan, because this voice was the voice of their common teacher, Jiraiya, who was supposed to be recuperating in Kiba Hospital. The three of them stopped what they were doing and looked towards the source of the sound. Among the ruins, Jiraiya was being supported by Tsunade and staggered in the direction of Watergate and Nagato. After seeing Watergate's clones stagnating opposite her, Conan immediately made a prompt decision and directly punched Watergate's clone. Shadow Clone Jutsu will automatically dissipate after withstanding a certain degree of attack. Although Watergate's Shadow Clone Jutsu contains Senjutsu Chakra, it can't get rid of the restriction from ninjutsu itself. A cloud of smoke surged, and Watergate's clone also disappeared directly. Conan increased her speed and rushed in the direction of Watergate and Nagato, but she directly met Watergate's cold eyes. At this moment, Watergate's bitter pain was on Nagato's neck, so Conan didn't dare to act rashly and could only stay in place. Without her usual cold expression, at this moment, Conan's eyes were full of deep begging Watergate not to deprive her only companion since childhood. Although Jiraiya couldn't move normally because of the injuries on his left arm and right leg, he still came to Watergate's side with Tsunade's help. "Tsunade-sama, Sensei's injuries are so serious. How can you let him come here?" Watergate said to Tsunade seriously. After all, the injuries on Jiraiya's body were obvious to all. He obviously hasn't been treated, but he was forced to come from Kiba Hospital to the forest outside with Leaf. It was self-evident what kind of adverse effects such a long distance would have on Jiraiya. Hearing Watergate's reprimanding tone, Tsunade wasn't angry. Instead, she said to Watergate with some disappointment, "You know your sensei's temper. When he was in Kiba Hospital, this guy saw the earth-shattering scene in the forest outside and knew that there was a fierce battle between you and Nagato. Although Nagato is indeed the enemy of Woodleaf, he is also Jiraiya's disciple. Jiraiya can't rest assured about such a disciple, so he repeatedly begged me to come and see. I couldn't stand this guy's nagging, so I could only bring him here." Facing Watergate's incomprehension and Tsunade's resentment, Jiraiya was not affected at all. Instead, he said to Watergate, "I know that Nagato has caused a lot of damage to Woodleaf, but after all, he's the child I watched grow up. I know how kind this child is in his heart, although this child has become paranoid over the years because of some things. But if I really watch this child lose his life, I really can't bear it. So Watergate, as your sensei, can I make a request to you? Spare this child's life. If you can't rest assured, I will help you supervise this child with Tsunade, and I will never let this child continue to carry out such a dangerous plan. Is that okay?" At the end of the sentence, Jiraiya's eyes even had some mist. The son of war, the leader of Akatsuki, at this moment, in the eyes of Jiraiya, were some useless titles. Jiraiya now only regarded Nagato as a poor child who was born out of his kindness. Faced with Jiraiya's request, Watergate was also a little stunned for a while. On one side was Woodleaf's enemy, and on the other side was his own sensei. Watergate, who was usually very decisive, was also very hesitant. But looking at Jiraiya's eyes full of tears, Watergate's wrist that was about to cut Nagato's neck couldn't exert any strength. But after a while, Watergate's eyes flashed with a hint of decisiveness. Apparently, he had made a decision. He quickly slashed Nagato's wrists and ankles with the Sanjiu in his hand. All the tendons of Nagato's hands and feet were cut off. A huge pain suddenly hit him, and Nagato almost couldn't suppress the urge to scream, but before he could, Minato quickly reached his hand to Nagato's eyes. Don't! Nagato seemed to be aware of what Minato wanted to do, and he suddenly suppressed his wail, and he could only shout at Minato with a little powerlessness. But Watergate still looked unmoved, and directly took out the 2 Rinnegan in Nagato's eye sockets. He took out a glass bottle from a ninja tool bag behind him and put a pair of Rinnegan in it. Although there was no potion in it to keep the eyes from diseased, it was the only thing he could do at this moment. Seeing that Nagato's Rinnegan was taken out, Conan became crazy, and for a while, she just wanted to come forward and fight Watergate. However, Minato once again put his kunai on Nagato's neck, and Conan also became wary of shooting the rat for fear of breaking the vases. Although the Rinnegan was taken away, although the tendons of his hands and feet were cut off, Nagato was at least alive at this moment. If Nagato lost his life because of her impulsiveness, Conan wouldn't be able to forgive herself. Chapter 498. After finishing all this, Minato winked at Tsunade, who was standing beside Jiraiya. Obviously, he hoped that Tsunade could come over and properly treat Nagato, who had his tendons cut and eyes taken away by him. After all, he couldn't let Nagato die from excessive blood loss, right? Tsunade also understood Watergate's meaning and came to Nagato's side, her palm covered with the transformed medical chakra. Although Tsunade was also confident that she could help Nagato connect his tendons when they were just cut, obviously, this was not what Watergate wanted to see. Watergate turned his head and said to Jiraiya, who was standing in front of a boulder on one side, "Jiraiya-sensei, I know the relationship between you and Nagato. Your previous bonds and feelings were slowly accumulated over 3 years of companionship. Such feelings are the most violent and lasting feelings. Personally, I certainly hope to fulfill Sensei's only request so far and let Nagato be safe and sound. But I don't only exist in this world as Watergate. I'm Watergate, but I'm also a ninja, and I'm also the Hokage of Woodleaf Ninja Village. Because of my identity and my duty, I can't let such a hidden danger stay. So I now cut Nagato's tendons and took away his Rinnegan. From today on, the leader of Akatsuki no longer exists. The only thing that exists is a native of Konoha who lost his hands, feet, and even his eyes because of the invasion of Konoha. Because of the serious injury, I asked my sensei and the dean of Konoha's hospital to take care of him. I think you understand what I mean, right? Watergate's meaning was actually very simple. Of course, it was okay to keep Nagato alive, but Watergate would never allow the living Nagato to still be the leader of Akatsuki, who had the power to destroy Woodleaf Village. If the tendons of his hands and feet were not treated in time, it would become a permanent injury, and the Rinnegan itself was the source of Nagato's power beyond mortals. These 2 extremely important things for Nagato were directly taken away, which also means that Nagato's qualification as a ninja was also deprived. Hearing Watergate's words, Conan's eyes flashed with anger, and she said to Watergate, "You are really as despicable as all the people in power. Disgusting." Hearing Conan's words, Watergate finally turned his head, and it seemed that only now did he remember that there was someone who had a close relationship with Nagato on the battlefield. After Shui Men's eyes turned slightly, a trace of coldness and threat flashed in his eyes as he said to Xiaonan, "Don't worry. Everyone has a different status, and their behavior will be different. They will be different. Another's nectar, I'm arsenic. So don't speak based on your own likes and dislikes. It won't show how brave and upright you are. It will only show how stupid and naive you are. Didn't you see that even Jiraiya-sensei didn't deny what I did? Naive and stupid." How long has it been since someone described Conan like this? Over the years, Conan's strength has indeed advanced by leaps and bounds, and she has already stepped into the ranks of Kage level. But as the leader of Akatsuki, although Nagato also let Conan intervene in a lot of dark things, he also subconsciously protected Conan to a certain extent, so this also caused Conan's thinking to be not as strong as her strength. Usually, it's okay. She can hide her emotions with her cold face. But once something unexpected or unacceptable happens, Conan's performance is very unsatisfactory. Just like now, Xiaonan was simply a weak girl who didn't know what to do in the face of difficulties. She wasn't the so-called messenger of God that was swift and decisive and had an indifferent expression that everyone spoke of. Oh, right, although Conan's expression was a bit absent-minded, Watergate won't shut up just because Conan's state is not good. It's precisely because Conan's expression is very absent-minded at the moment that it gives Watergate more possibilities to arrange things. Nissan, please go back to Akatsuki and tell everyone that Nagato and Sixpats Pain have all fallen in Woodleaf Village. After all, although Nagato has lost his hands, feet, and eyes, at least he is still alive. If you don't do this, although he will still be alive, some of our interrogation agencies in Woodleaf may not be able to hold themselves back and want to get valuable information from Nagato's mouth. Any interrogation agency in Ninja Village is almost a gathering place for perverts and psychologically deformed people. In such a place, everyone tortures others as a kind of entertainment. As a person who has been in contact with the dark side of the shinobi world, it's very clear how dangerous it is. Although Nagato has the protection of Jiraiya and Tsunade, and he may not be thrown into such a place as Watergate said, Conan can't afford to gamble and dare not gamble. Conan, who has lost Yahiko, will never allow Nagato, who grew up with her since childhood, to leave her. If this really happens, Conan will also collapse. Watching Watergate take away his disciples' hands, feet, and eyes, and watching Watergate threaten Conan, who is just a girl, Jiraiya doesn't know why his heart became cold. Was this still the same Namikaze, Minato, who looked so positive like the sun shining on everyone? Now, Minato doesn't seem to be as amiable as he was in front of others. At this moment, Minato is ruthless and threatening. It's getting more and more difficult for Jiraiya to connect him with the child who used to follow him to learn martial arts. Is this change good or bad? Jiraiya doesn't know, because as the leader of a big force, he really needs Watergate's attitude. He doesn't care about the means, he only cares about the benefits. But as a person, he can't just drive all his actions for the sake of benefits. There's no way to find the answer. Jiraiya can only choose to be silent. Everything was seen by Jiraiya, but Jiraiya can only say nothing. Watching his disciples killing each other, even if his heart is full of blood and tears, Jiraiya still can't say a word, because any word may have consequences that Jiraiya can't bear. Chapter 499. Nagato, who could no longer move, was handed over to Tsunade. This battle also ushered in the end of Nagato's capture and Conan's retreat. Under the threat of Watergate, Conan had to leave with Leaf and inform the Akatsuki about the loss of Nagato and pain of Rakuto to Woodleaf. Because only in this way can the ambitious people in the entire ninja world be a little bit more peaceful. Only in this way can a message be sent to the entire ninja world. Although Woodleaf suffered some damage due to the invasion of Akatsuki's leader, it was only because Watergate, as the Hokage of Woodleaf, went out to train. Watergate, who returned from his training, directly defeated Pain of Rakuto and the leader of Akatsuki with a momentum of crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. The people in the ninja world who bury their thoughts carefully wipe their eyes clean carefully. Don't be blinded by desire. As long as Watergate is still there, as long as those ninjas who stand in the top position in Woodleaf are still there, then all those who try to do something to Woodleaf, please be prepared to not only fail to bite the meat, but also get their teeth broken. And just after the end of this war, Watergate's popularity in Woodleaf increased almost day by day. The ninja world is a place where individual strength is valued. Such a powerful Pain of Rakuto was destroyed by Watergate's hands. Then the civilians and ninjas who live in Woodleaf have a solid backing. So although Woodleaf suffered some losses because of such an invasion, the sadness caused by the loss was quickly replaced by the joy brought by Watergate's strength. Everyone sweeps the snow in front of their own door. Don't worry about the frost on the roof of others. After all, the people who lost their lives in such a war are only a small number of people. For most people, they just lost a certain degree of property and house. The heartache caused by these losses was also reduced a lot by the support from the daimyo of the Land of Fire and the statement of subsidies issued by the Woodleaf Ninja Village. At least, it wasn't a total loss without a trace of comfort. Wood Leaf Ninja Village and the Land of Fire have decided to build houses for the residents who lost their houses for free and give them a certain amount of compensation for the war, which made everyone feel a lot better. But after all, this was an invasion that caused a huge impact. Everything that happened wasn't that joyful. On the day of the rescue of the Land of Fire and Wood Leaf Ninja Village's statement of compensation, a piece of news swept through the entire Land of Fire. As the representative of Wood Leaf Ninja Village, he participated in the Second Shinobi World War and the Third Shinobi World War. The disciple of the Three Generations Hokage, one of the famous Sannin in the Shinobi World War, Jiraiya, one of the famous Sannin in the Shinobi world, was injured during Pain's invasion and caused some old injuries, so he asked Wood Leaf Ninja Village to retire. As the fourth Hokage of Wood Leaf Ninja Village, Watergate, Namikaze also agreed to Jiraiya's request after several evasions. Xianxia, who had been staying at home and paying attention to the news of the outside world, said with some emotion when he heard that Jiraiya chose to directly remove his ninja identity. Everyone says that Jiraiya is just an idiot ninja who has strength but no brains. But such a person may be a little confused on small things, but he is very smart on big things. Great wisdom may seem stupid, but that's it. Mishiro, who has been accompanying Xianxia to deal with all kinds of intelligence, was naturally beside Xianxia at this moment. He was responsible for recording some of Xianxia's orders and passing them to the Bloodcloak Pavilion. After hearing Xianxia's exclamation, she said with a hint of envy, "That's right. After all, Jiraiya-sama has been fighting for Wood Leaf all his life. Now, in his old age, he can marry the woman he has loved all his life and get a comfortable life in his old age. It is indeed a smart thing to do." After hearing Mishiro's words, Xianxia slowly shook his head and then said to Mishiro, "Although what you said is not unreasonable, the reason why I feel that Jiraiya is a smart person is not what you said. Wood Leaf became strong because of the pedantry of root, elder group, and internal conflicts between large and small families, but didn't have the potential to suppress the ninja world. After such an invasion, although Konoha suffered some losses, it also made Minato, the young and powerful fourth Hokage of Konoha, known as the Hokage. To put it bluntly, in the current Wood Leaf, even if the elder group and all the forces of large and small families gather together, they can't withstand a casual order from Watergate. This is the powerful prestige that Watergate has now. This is the great power that Watergate has now. This is the great power that Wood Leaf can gather. Hearing this, Mishiro, who has always been smart, also understood the meaning of Xianxia's words. And then Xianxia said, "It is precisely because of the strong power of the fourth Hokage and the strong cohesion of Wood Leaf that the Wood Leaf will become a powerful organization without any constraints. And such a powerful force appearing in the ninja world is something that no one wants to see. Although on the surface, other ninja villages may not have the power to directly confront Wood Leaf, but that doesn't mean that they won't use some insidious means. Just one or two forces may not have a huge impact on the Wood Leaf, but when dozens of forces use insidious means against the Wood Leaf at the same time, not to cause any losses to the Wood Leaf, but just to annoy the Wood Leaf, it's enough to annoy the fourth Hokage." Hearing Mishiro's words, Xianxia also smiled with relief, apparently agreeing with Mishiro's point of view. People often say that there can be no construction without destruction, and only after destruction can there be construction. Indeed, after going through hardships, whether it's a person or an organization, as long as they survive the most painful period, they will definitely usher in a great burst of strength. But such a point of view is only limited to the destroyer. There are other existences in this world besides the destroyer. Seeing a new threat appear in front of them, no matter what kind of force it will be absolutely difficult to accept. At this moment, Watergate has become a target to attract firepower. As long as there isn't a more threatening existence in the ninja world, Wood Leaf will definitely have a difficult time in the future. Chapter 500. Wood Leaf Ninja Village. In a mansion of the Senju family, Jiraiya looked worriedly at Nagato, who was lying on the bed with a circle of gauze covering his eyes. After bringing Nagato to Tsunade's house, under Jiraiya's repeated insistence, Tsunade helped Nagato connect the tendons of his hands and feet. However, because Minato was very heavy-handed and missed the best opportunity, although Nagato could move his hands and feet, he could only move. At this moment, according to the condition of Nagato's hands and feet, even if he undergoes a certain degree of rehabilitation training, at most he can only recover to a level slightly weaker than normal people. In fact, it's not just Nagato's body that's crippled. Jiraiya's body also seriously damaged his left arm and right leg because of the previous battle with Tendo Pain. Although he can walk normally now, even jumping and running are not a problem. But chakra can't be used at all. As a ninjutsu-type ninja, if his hands can't conduct chakra, doesn't that mean he's disqualified from being a ninja? A sensei and a disciple. They both became useless in almost one day. This is really a strange fate. Jiraiya took a deep look at his disciple who was lying on the bed and didn't want to move or speak. He sighed deeply and walked to the door to push it open. At this time, Nagato, who had been lying on the bed and didn't want to talk or move, said to Jiraiya with his rather weak voice, "Sensei, do you regret it?" This sentence didn't have a beginning or end, but Jiraiya didn't know why he understood Nagato's meaning. The so-called regret in Nagato's words wasn't that he resisted when he invaded with Leaf and ended up unable to become a ninja. Nagato wanted to ask him something more distant. Nagato was asking him if he regretted saving 3 orphans, including Nagato, and training them as ninjas when he was in the Rain Country. Hearing this sentence, Jiraiya stood at the door and was a little stunned. It seemed that his thoughts were also pulled to the land that had been raining decades ago. In front of him, there seemed to be 3 children who did their best to survive in the troubled world. Finally, Jiraiya's eyes recovered. "In fact, I don't regret making you ninjas. After all, this is the only way you can save your own lives. The only thing I regret is that I didn't bring you back to the Wood Leaf under the pressure from all sides. Instead, I left you in the Rain Country. Although I wasn't the one who caused your sorrows, I was the one who brought you down this path. Perhaps this is the only thing I regret, right?" Jiraiya's voice was very low, and there was even a faint, grainy feeling produced by the friction of sandpaper. It could be seen that Jiraiya's mood was very unstable at the moment. After hearing Jiraiya's apology, Nagato's heart was filled with emotion. "No matter what, thank you, teacher, for giving us 3 children the means to survive in this chaotic world. Thanks a lot." At this moment, this child is still grateful to me. Hearing Nagato's words, Jiraiya's face had a self-deprecating smile. After all, although Nagato saved his life, he also lost his limbs and eyes. Such a humiliating life is the biggest insult for people like Nagato. His momentary kindness. He didn't expect to directly push the situation to such a point. Yes, Watergate's sudden attack was actually not in Jiraiya's calculation. At the moment when he saw Watergate, Jiraiya wanted to go directly to stop Watergate. At the moment when he brought Nagato home, the thought of simply helping Nagato in such suffering appeared in Jiraiya's mind more than once. But no matter how many times such a thought appeared in Jiraiya's mind, it was abruptly pushed back by Jiraiya. After all, as long as he is alive, there is hope, right? This is why Jiraiya coaxed Tsunade to go against Watergate's would connect Nagato's hand and foot tendons. When Jiraiya walked out of Nagato's room had fallen into a long dead silence. After all, in Watergate's view, Nagato now has no ability to move and no Rinnegan beyond human limits. So Watergate did not deploy Umbu to monitor Nagato. This is Jiraiya and Tsunade's house. What kind of Umbu can and dare to monitor day and night? It must be known that Tsunade has never been a good-tempered person. For their own ribs, for their own lives, almost no one dares to monitor Tsunade's house. So at this moment, no one noticed that a huge Nepenthes plant was slowly rising from the floor of Nagato's room. This pitcher plant wrapped a member of Akatsuki, Zetsu, who looked strange and half black and half white. Although Nagato's hands and feet haven't recovered, and Nagato's Rinnegan has been taken away. But Nagato's perception as a ninja is still there. Although Zetsu only leaked a weak chakra, as a person familiar with Zetsu, Nagato still noticed Zetsu's existence. Zetsu, did Hoodlum send you here? Nagato's tone was very cold. Although Zetsu is also his subordinate in name, Nagato knows that Zetsu has always been with Hoodlum. Now that he has lost his ability as a ninja, Zetsu suddenly appeared by his side. With Nagato's own understanding of Hoodlum and Zetsu, Zetsu definitely didn't come here to save him this time. It doesn't matter who sent me here. What matters is the purpose of my coming here. Nagato, you know too much. I don't feel at ease leaving you in the wood leaf, so I decided to come and erase you after thinking about it several times. He has been following Hoodlum for a long time. Although he has always liked to talk all kinds of nonsense, he can barely be regarded as a qualified henchman. Zetsu came here to prepare for Nagato out of his own will? Such an answer is beyond Nagato's expectation. It seems that Hoodlum is not so good at ordering Zetsu. Not bad. I actually saw such an interesting scene before my death. I don't know what kind of expression Hoodlum will have when he sees Zetsu's autonomy. Although I may not be able to see it, I believe it will be very wonderful. Chapter 501. When Jiraiya went to visit Nagato again, Nagato had already stopped breathing. Jiraiya carefully examined Nagato's body from top to bottom, but he didn't find any injuries. The only strange thing was probably the 2 lines of blood flowing from Nagato's empty eye sockets that were wrapped in gauze. Jiraiya didn't know what kind of mood made Nagato shed such tears, but Nagato's life was already gone, and everything became meaningless. Whether Nagato chose to commit suicide because he hated his own powerlessness, or he died for all other reasons, Jiraiya didn't want to pursue it. All Jiraiya could feel was the tiredness from the bottom of his heart, and he just wanted to throw away everything and live a peaceful life. After cremating Nagato's body, Jiraiya buried the urn containing Nagato's ashes under a tree in his courtyard. Every day, he sat in the courtyard and drank and chatted with Tsunade, living a leisurely life. However, as the 4th Hokage of Woodleaf, Watergate didn't live as carefree as Jiraiya. After the news of his victory over the leader of Akatsuki spread throughout the ninja world, although Watergate gained a huge reputation that he had never had before, he also faced a huge pressure as Nangongjia and Mashiro expected. In just the last 3 days, Konoha has received nearly 100 cases of harassment from large and small forces. As a ninja who performs various tasks in the ninja world, once they encounter a deliberate difficulty, it will lead to a sharp increase in the pressure of performing tasks. A ninja who was about to carry out a mission to eliminate bandits suddenly found that the bandits hired ninjas who were about the same level as them at a low price to guard them. A ninja who was about to carry out an assassination mission. Before he took action, his assassination target was notified in advance and recruited a large group of ninjas and guards to protect his safety. Such deliberate difficulties led to a significant decrease in Konoha's mission completion rate. The decrease in the completion rate of the quest also caused a chain reaction. Many people who intended to issue the quest also temporarily changed the ninja village they commissioned. Now Woodleaf indeed has a reputation that other forces can't match, but this reputation also led to the hostility of other forces. Watergate is indeed strong. Woodleaf's high-level power is indeed strong, but it doesn't mean that the basic ninjas of Woodleaf Village are also strong. Woodleaf now, although nothing can be seen on the surface, there are already some signs of resentment. And under the investigation of the Umbu under Minato's direct command, Minato also learned that someone is adding fuel to the fire to replace the Hokage. Although such a person behind the scenes hasn't appeared yet, from such a manipulation of public opinion and heart, such a person is definitely not easy. Crash Watergate looked at the report in his hand, to his heart twos to bottom, his heart's heart to heart. Under his influence was thrown to the floor, to the report to the floor. I'm still too impatient. Watergate stretched out his hand and pressed on his slightly swollen temple. His words were full of inexplicable emotions, which were mixed with anger, regret, and more irritability. After destroying 6 paths of pain, I only thought that my fame would spread all over the ninja world, and my reputation in Woodleaf would rise greatly. But I didn't think about how other forces would react in the face of such a threat. Miscalculation. No plan. Jiraiya-sensei also informed me of Nagato's strange death, which undoubtedly also created a gap between Jiraiya-sensei and me. For a while, there was a trace of betrayal around me. Sure enough, it's a good method. Just when Watergate was still immersed in his own distress, Watergate's office door was knocked. As the leader of a ninja village, he must not show any negative emotions in front of his subordinates. Only in this way can he show his majesty. After clearing his throat slightly and adjusting his expression and sitting posture, Watergate said to the door, "Come in." Hearing Watergate's order, the office door was slowly opened. As the think tank of Woodleaf, Shikakanara, and the 2 representatives of the elders of Kiba, Mito Manitis and Zhuan Shaochun, walked in together. After respectfully saluting Watergate, Shikakanara took the lead and said, "Hokage-sama, the mist, the cloud, the sand, and the rock have jointly issued a notice to Woodleaf Village to start the 5 Kage Summit." With that said, Shikakanara took out a scroll with the seal of the 4 major ninja villages from his arms, stepped forward a few steps, and slowly placed the scroll in front of Watergate. Watergate didn't open the scroll carefully. Instead, he looked at Zhuan Shaochun, Mito Manitis, and Shikakanara and said, "This scroll must be a lot of useless words. The 3 of you should have already read the content. Why don't the 3 of you explain the information and your thoughts to me?" After hearing Watergate's words, Shikakanara, Zhuan Shaochun, and Mito Manitis looked at each other, and the older Mito Manitis stepped forward and answered Watergate's question. Reporting to Hokage-sama, the main content of this scroll is that the Akatsuki sent our Woodleaf ninja Uchiha Sasuke to rob the Cloud Village's Hachibi Column Force, who is the younger brother of the Cloud Village's 4th Raikage AI. This caused the 4th Raikage to be furious, and he wants to gather the Kage of the 5 major ninja villages to discuss matters related to dealing with the Akatsuki. Uchiha Sasuke? As the 4th Hokage of Woodleaf, Watergate naturally knew Sasuke's identity and experience. He didn't expect that Uchiha Sasuke, who has been silent in the ninja world for so long, suddenly made such a big news. After a little sigh, Watergate was very keenly aware of the abnormality. The temper of Yondaime Raikage is well known in the shinobi world. Such a hot-tempered person actually thought of summoning the 5 great shinobi villages to deal with the Akatsuki. It seems he was forced to a certain extent. But now Woodleaf itself is the target of public criticism, and if they're not careful, they will become the target of a trap. This 5 Kage conference is not only gathering people to deal with the Akatsuki. I think several of the ninja villages also have their own little ideas, right? Chapter 502. While Minato, Shikakanara, Kovyudatane, and Hamura Mitokado were still discussing the hidden purpose of the 5 Kages Conference, the temporary location of the 5 Kages Conference was in the Land of Iron, the absolute neutral country of the samurai. The leader of the Land of Iron, Mifune, was sitting cross-legged on his bed. A katana was placed on his knees, as if he was meditating to exercise his will. However, San Fun, who was sitting on the bed, suddenly opened his eyes. Although he wasn't young anymore, his movements were very swift and violent. Turning over and getting out of bed, pulling out the katana and staring at it, a series of actions were done cleanly and nimbly. Suddenly, Mifune's eyes flashed with a trace of ruthlessness, and the hand holding the katana suddenly exerted force. There was no way to see the katana unsheathing with the naked eye, but a sword light suddenly appeared in the air. This was the ultimate samurai skill, Iaedo Slash. As the leader of the Land of Iron, Mifune himself was also the most powerful samurai in the Land of Iron. The Iaedo Slash was originally an ultimate samurai skill, but when it was used by Mifyun, it became unimaginably powerful. Just such a slash was already comparable to the attack of a Kage-level powerhouse. And Mifyun himself was also very surprised by the power of the Iato slash he just used. Such a slash already surpassed the power of the Iato slash he used before. But even so, Mifyun's eyebrows were still wrinkled together. Because the attack just now was beyond his usual level, Mifyun didn't feel that the attack was effective. Jumping back, Mifyun directly pulled away from the place he just attacked, and looked at the place he just attacked with vigilance. To be able to dodge such an attack, the person who came must not be a simple character. Mifyun was used to seeing the wind and waves, and even survived under the hands of the so-called demigod, Hanzo, the salamander. So he naturally had this kind of basic knowledge. And at the place where Mifyun just attacked, a person's figure slowly emerged. One of his hands was wrapped in his coat, one of his eyes was wrapped in bandages, and because it was difficult for him to move, he was holding a crutch in his hand. Looking at the figure in front of him, Mifyun immediately exclaimed, "Woodleaf defector, Shimura Danzo?" That's right, standing in front of Mifyun was Shimura Danzo, who had been attacked by Watergate in Nangongjia and had no choice but to flee from Woodleaf Village. Danzo's eyes flashed with anger and unwillingness when he heard Mifyun mention Woodleaf's betrayal. He had lived his whole life for the sake of the Woodleaf. Now, he was crowned with the title of Rebel Ninja. It was really ironic. But at this moment, Danzo didn't say anything to Mifyun. He just walked towards Mifyun step by step. Seeing Danzo walking towards him, Mifyun's spirit instantly tensed up. Shimura Danzo was the disciple of 3 generations Hokage Yuan Fei. As the disciple of the second Hokage, he naturally won't be easy to deal with. Danzo obviously didn't come here to have a friendly chat with him. His murderous look made it obvious that he wanted to take his life. Mifyun immediately held the katana in his hand and used the Iato slash on Danzo again. Danzo didn't reveal his figure just now, so Mifyun didn't know how Danzo avoided his attack. But now, the Iato slash landed on Danzo's body. The steel blade sliced through the air at a speed that was invisible to the naked eye and produced a slight whistling sound. Facing such a tyrannical attack, Danzo didn't dodge and continued to walk towards Mifyun. In a moment, the blade cut through Danzo's body, but Mifyun didn't expect that his katana would pass through Danzo's body as if the Danzo standing in front of him didn't exist. But whether it was the dangerous aura emanating from Danzo or the feeling in his heart, it was telling him that the person standing in front of him and withstanding his attack in such a strange way was the real Shimura Danzo. While Mifyun's eyes were filled with doubts, Danzo, who was walking slowly towards him, suddenly sped up and arrived in front of him almost instantly. The crutch that Danzo had been holding in his hand all this time was now raised high in the air, and like a long sword, he thrust it in the direction of Mifyun. Mifyun picked up his katana and placed it horizontally in the path of Danzo's attack. After all, he was a samurai who specialized in swordsmanship. Compared to a ninja like Danzo, he was better at close combat. In an instant, he saw through Danzo's attack. But even if his attack was seen through by Mifyun, Danzo didn't change the direction of his crutch, as if he wanted to compete with Mifyun's strength. When Mifyun saw that Danzo didn't change the direction of his crutch, he also exerted force in his hand, as if he wanted to meet Danzo head-on. At the moment when the crutch and katana collided, Danzo's crutch directly passed through the defense of Mifyun's katana, just like Danzo did before, directly stabbing towards Mifyun's forehead. Mifyun, who didn't react in time, was directly stabbed in the head by Danzo's attack. The blood and the yellow and white substance in his brain directly stained the crutch that passed through Mifyun's head. Seeing that Mifyun has been killed by him, Danzo slowly pulled out the crutch that he inserted into Mifyun's head and untied the bandage on his right arm. On his slightly twisted and pale arm, there are 10 3-tomo Sharingan inlaid on it, and one of these 10 Sharingan is turned pale white. Coldly looking at Mifyun on the ground, Danzo finally said slowly, "Mifyun, don't blame me. The only thing I can do now is to use the opportunity of this 5 Kage tournament to help my hometown, Woodleaf, get rid of this situation of being surrounded by wolves. Even if I was kicked out of Woodleaf, it's only because people like Bokaze, Watergate, and Nangongja can't tolerate me, and not because Woodleaf abandoned me. Let me do my best to do something for Woodleaf that only I, Shimura Danzo, can do. Chapter 503. Finally, after some discussion, Watergate, Narashikaku, Zhuan Xiaochun, and Mito Menitis came up with a solution to the 5 Kages conference. In any case, Woodleaf must participate in this 5 Kages conference. After all, this 5 Kages conference was held to fight against the Akatsuki. Woodleaf, as the ninja village that suffered the most damage from the Akatsuki, and also the ninja village that caused the most damage to the Akatsuki, Woodleaf must not be evaded. Since they can't evade, then they must face it bravely. It's nothing more than dealing with every move that comes their way. Based on the fact that during this period of time, those big and small forces only dared to secretly use some small means to make Konoha feel disgusted. Presumably, nothing too excessive will happen in this 5 Kage summit. The people who participate in the 5 Kages conference can bring 2 personal guards. Generally speaking, they will bring 1 person with superior strength and 1 person with superior intelligence to participate in the 5 Kages conference. But the personnel can't be transferred so casually. After all, a Kage leaving the village still has to leave a certain amount of defense force for the village. After careful consideration, Watergate finally decided on his 2 followers. People who can use their brains are very easy to find. In the Nara clan, there is a ready-made existence with wisdom far beyond ordinary people, Nara Shikamaru. But as a follower who can show off his strength, it's not so easy to find. After all, almost all of Woodleaf's high-end combat power has received missions to earn rewards, in order to offset the malicious influence of other forces. As for the few ninjas left in Woodleaf, Watergate can't choose them to participate in the 5 Kages conference. After all, Woodleaf itself has to leave some guards, right? When Watergate, Zhuan Xiaochun, and Mito Menitis were still thinking about the second follower, Nara Shikaku opened his mouth and then closed it again. Seeing Nara Shikaku's hesitation, Watergate said to Nara Shikaku, "Shikaku, if you have someone in mind, you can say it. After all, it's not easy to decide on a candidate. If you think of a suitable candidate, you can also say it." Hearing Watergate's words, Zhuan Xiaochun and Mito Menitis also turned their heads and looked at Nara Shikaku. They want to see what kind of suitable candidate Nara Shikaku can propose that won't lose the face of Woodleaf. Seeing the 3 looking at him together, Shikaku's face flashed a trace of helplessness. Then he said to Watergate, "So we decided to let my son, Shikamaru Nara, who doesn't have a big reputation in the shinobi world, as a member of the entourage, then the other person must already have a big reputation in the shinobi world. And such people in Woodleaf can be counted on one hand. It's nothing more than Sharingan Kakashi, Blue Beast Mike Guy, and if one level up, then it's naturally Woodleaf Sannin or Woodleaf Yama." When Narashikaku said the name Woodleaf Yama, Zhuan Xiaochun and Mito Menitis' eyes flashed with light. Yes, why did they forget about such an existence? Although Nangongja wasn't that famous among the younger generation, Nangongja wasn't that famous. But for all the ninjas who participated in the Third Shinobi World War, Nangongja is a star that can't be ignored. Whether it's Nangongja's casual killing method on the battlefield, or his excellent leadership skills in the war after that, Nangongja is one of the best. Although Nangongja has been living in seclusion in the past few years, once such a strong person comes out again, it's a big news for the ninja world and Woodleaf Village. And Nangongja, who is close to a killing star, coming out again is enough to suppress some people who have evil intentions and want to bite off a piece of meat from Woodleaf Village. It's really a win-win situation. Anyway, Nangongja has been living in seclusion in the Woodleaf Village for the past few years. As a Woodleaf ninja, he hasn't contributed to his village. Now that the Hokage and the elders have given orders to Nangongja, a wood leaf ninja, Nangongja has a reason to resist? But compared to the excited Zhuan Xiaochun and Mito Menitis, Watergate's face had a somewhat inexplicable strange smile. After all, Mito Menitis and Zhuan Xiaochun don't know, but as his confidant, Shikakanara should understand the close relationship between Nangongja and Woodleaf Village. If he wants Nangongja to agree to his conditions, he must pay a price, and it's an extremely high price. Isn't it a bit of a loss just to let Nangongja go out? Hokage-sama, Shikakanara's words are reasonable. Hokage-sama, please consider it carefully. If necessary, we elders of Kiba are willing to co-sign your order to recruit Nangongja. Looking at Watergate, Mito Menitis said excitedly to Watergate. Minato could only look at Shikakanara with a little bit of complaint. After all, the relationship between Nangongja and Konoha couldn't be directly mentioned. Otherwise, it would have a great negative impact on the relationship between Konoha and Minato. Now Shikakanara mentioned Nangongja's name in front of Mito Menitis and Zhuan Xiaochun, two people who are older but not smarter. Such behavior is no different from putting Watergate on the fire. Watergate finally understood why Shikakanara was like that before. Indeed, if it was just Watergate and Shikaka here, Shikakanara will directly propose such an option for Watergate's reference. But now that Mito Menitis and Zhuan Xiaochun are here, Watergate forced Shikakanara to say such a thing. Isn't this directly raising such a proposal to the level of a decision? Looking at what Mito Menitis just said, isn't he preparing to use Watergate's power as Hokage and the power of the elders of Kiba to pressure Nangongja and force Nangongja to participate in the 5 Kage tournament together with Watergate? All of this is really a bit unexpected, but Watergate can't just directly say to Mito Menitis and Zhuan Xiaochun, Nangongja won't go with me unconditionally, just give up. So Watergate can only nod and smile at Mito Menitis and Zhuan Xiaochun. Chapter 504. After finally sending back the 2 elders of Kiba advisors, Mito Menitis and Zhuan Xiaochun, back, Watergate signaled Shikakanara to stay. After closing the office door, Shikakanara sat opposite Watergate under Watergate's signal. Shikaku, although I know that letting Nangongja become my follower and participate in the 5 Kage Summit with me is a good opportunity to show the strength of our Woodleaf Village. All of this is based on the premise that Nangongja is willing to listen to my orders. If we want Nangongja to listen to my orders, we must pay a price that is enough to move him. Shikaku, I don't know if this price is worth it in your opinion. Watergate knew that with Shikaku's high IQ, he would never casually say something that shouldn't be said in front of Mito Menitis and Zhuan Xiaochun. Maybe, just maybe, Shikakanara's goal wasn't to let Nangongja participate in the 5 Kage Summit under the double pressure of Bokaze Watergate, Mito Menitis, and Zhuan Xiaochun, but also to provoke the conflict between the elders of Kiba and Nangongja. After all, from Nangongja's perspective, Bokaze Watergate, who was familiar with his relationship with the Woodleaf Village, would never use such a stupid move to force him to do something he didn't want to do. Since it wasn't Bokaze Watergate, the only people who could force him to do this were Mito Menitis and Zhuan Xiaochun, who also jointly signed the appointment letter, who represented the elders of Kiba. Perhaps this wouldn't directly cause an unpredictable large-scale conflict between Nangongja and the elders of Kiba, but once this kind of disgust took root in his heart, it was difficult to easily disappear. When the time came, Watergate would pay a certain price to appease Nangongja and appropriately condemn the elders of Kiba's rash behavior. On one hand, this kind of behavior could strengthen the relationship with Nangongja, and, on the other hand, it could also suppress the elders of Kiba, who seemed to be a little restless recently. Wasn't it killing 2 birds with 1 stone? Of course, it's worth it, and I think that maybe Nangongja won't put forward any excessive conditions. After all, this is a rare scene in the shinobi world where all the Kages of the 5 great villages are gathered together. We all know that there's a force behind Xianxia. This kind of meeting will cause a sensation in the shinobi world, but at the same time, it is also a secret meeting. Any information that doesn't seem so eye-catching will be of great value. Isn't all of this the biggest temptation for Xianxia? Sure enough, Shikaka Nara had actually seen through the clues. The so-called price, under Shikaku's description, directly became a qualification for participation that didn't have any practical significance. Watergate knew that what he needed to do now was to find the right time to appease Xianxia. After understanding what he needed to do, Watergate's heart gradually calmed down. After chatting with Shikaku about some trivial matters and talking about the performance of Shikamaru and Naruto these days, Watergate even personally sent Shikaku out of the Hokage's office. After sending Shikaku away, Watergate sat at his desk for a long time without speaking. As the leader of an organization, it's indeed a good thing that his subordinates have extraordinary abilities, but once such a subordinate even includes himself as the leader in his plan, it's not necessarily a good thing. Shikaka Nara, because your intelligence is still very useful, I still have a certain tolerance for you. But once one day your sacrifice exceeds my tolerance, Shikaka Nara, who had just walked out of the Hokage's office, suddenly felt a chill on his back. This feeling full of danger immediately made Shikaka Nara reflect on his words and deeds. The more he thought about it, the more his heart palpitated. He seemed to have said too much and thought too much. Over the years, as a wood leaf, Watergate's thoughts have become more and more unpredictable. But just now, he still subconsciously treated Watergate with the same attitude he used to treat Watergate. It's a bit dangerous to do so. The tallest tree in the forest will be destroyed by the wind. Once he acts too smart, and even uses his intelligence in places where it shouldn't be used, he will really be abandoned. Shikaka Nara is very good at playing shogi. In a game of shogi, patience and intelligence are equally important. Be sure to remember. In Xianxia's mansion, Xianxia was holding a mission scroll in his hand. The expression on his face can be said to be wonderful. He didn't expect that although he lived in the wood leaf, he would actually receive a mission scroll signed by both the Hokage and the elders. Did the fourth Hokage lose his mind? After taking the mission scroll from Xianxia with a strange look on his face, Mashiro couldn't help but say to Xianxia, after all, at the back of the scroll, Minato Watergate's name was written so conspicuously. But Xianxia shook his head and pointed to the signatures of Mito Monitis and Zhuan Xiaochun, which were closely followed by Minato Watergate's signature, to Mashiro. Mashiro, the real point is here. Xianxia's eyes were full of wisdom, and he said to Mashiro, it seems that the elders of Kiba, these arrogant politicians, are going to court death or provoke someone they shouldn't provoke, right? This scroll is a ploy to create estrangement between me and the elders of Kiba. The person who can come up with such a ploy in the wood leaf is very likely to be the current head of the Nara clan, Shikaka Nara, who doesn't know that after the birds are gone, the hound is cooked. The more Shikaka Nara does now, the more miserable his end will be. After Watergate ascended to the position of Hokage, he was no longer a simple ninja like before. Now he is a cold-blooded and ruthless politician. As long as it is to eliminate threats and obtain benefits, there's almost nothing that Watergate can't do. I hope that Shikaka Nara won't be so short-sighted. He will really see that the current Watergate is not the same as before. After Xianxia sighed, he looked at the order to become the follower of the Fire Country's Hokage, and his eyes were shining. Chapter 505. Casually throwing the scroll with the signature of the highest level of Konoha to the side, Xianxia looked at Mashiro and said with a solemn expression, that's right. Don't worry. For the time being, we don't need to pay attention to such a mission scroll. It won't take long for Minato to come directly to apologize and then put all the shit on the heads of the elders of Konoha. It's really interesting. If I wasn't the leader of a force like the Blood Clothing Pavilion and didn't know such little tricks, I'm sure I would have been toyed with in the palm of your hand. When Xianxia spoke, there was no anger on his face. Instead, There was an inexplicable smile on his face. Such a smile looked like the smile of a person sitting in the audience, watching an actor on the stage, trying his best to perform a burlesque. Because of the actor's antics, he felt a mixture of contempt and IQ-crushing smile. When Mashiro saw the smile on Nangong's face, he knew that Nangong already knew what was going on, so he didn't say anything else. Sure enough, after seeing that Nangong received the mission scroll but didn't have the reaction that Watergate and Shikaku expected, Watergate finally couldn't sit still. After all, the date of the Five Shadows conference was getting closer and closer. It wasn't easy to get Nangong to be his follower, and he had also made a lot of arrangements. If he were to change the person at the last minute, it would be troublesome. After all, Nangong is also an important part of Watergate and Shikaku's plan to show the power of Woodleaf Ninja Village. Please don't blame me for coming uninvited. After knocking on the door of Nangong's house, Nangong, as the head of the family, opened the door for Watergate, who was standing at the door. After seeing Nangong, Watergate didn't have the slightest arrogance of a Hokage. Instead, he was very polite to Nangong and said, "Hokage-sama is too polite. As the leader of Woodleaf Ninja Village, I'm flattered that you can take the time to come to the residence of an insignificant ninja like me. Don't just stand at the door, otherwise wouldn't the Nangong family be laughed at for being rude? Please come in." After making a gesture to Watergate, Nangong led Watergate into his house. Although the communication between the two seemed to be very polite and close, a sense of alienation and rejection was so obvious. In fact, whether it was Watergate or Nangong, both of them knew that from the moment they met, they had already begun to plot against each other. But whether it was Watergate or Nangong, they didn't exclude this kind of behavior from each other. After all, whether it was Nangong or Watergate, both of them stood at the top of power. Although it doesn't sound good, in fact, it was a behavior that could never be avoided. In order to get the benefits they want, everyone will, intentionally or unintentionally, calculate others or themselves. All of this is understandable. Nangong and Watergate walked into the living room together. At the same time, the two of them tacitly didn't mention anything related to the Five Shadows Summit. Instead, they began to chat about their daily lives. From the situation at home to Naruto's performance these days, the two of them were waiting to see who could resist the desire in their hearts more. It turned out that Watergate was indeed slightly inferior. It wasn't that Watergate's temperament was much worse than Nangong's. It was just that the two of them faced different things. For Nangong, the so-called Five Shadows Summit was indeed somewhat valuable. However, even if he didn't go, it wouldn't be difficult for him to find out what kind of agreement was reached in this summit with the help of the Blood Garment Pavilion's intelligence collection system. But it was different for Watergate. During this period of time, various methods from large and small forces had been used openly and secretly. In fact, Watergate was already a little tired of dealing with them. The incidents caused by these people may not be a big deal, but each one was more troublesome than the previous one. As the Hokage, Watergate couldn't let his energy be tied up in these trivial nonsense. Watergate really needed a ninja like Nangong, who was beyond the ordinary Jounin level, to establish the scene of Woodleaf being full of talents and masters. Watergate couldn't help but look at Nangong, who was sitting opposite him with a calm expression. He didn't know why, but there was a feeling of humiliation in his heart. After all, Watergate, who was in a high position, actually had to beg others. This was unacceptable for the proud Watergate, but he had been forced by the current situation to lower his proud head. "I came this time not only to chat with you, but also to apologize to you." Hearing Watergate's words, Nangong's heart flashed a trace of understanding. The real show had just begun. Although he already understood Watergate's meaning, Nangong couldn't show such emotions. After all, it was simply a direct slap to Watergate's face. "I don't know why the Hokage came to apologize to a nobody like me. I don't think the Hokage has anything to apologize to me." Nangong was very respectful to Watergate, as if he really didn't understand why Watergate would apologize to him. Watergate knew that Nangong actually didn't care whether he was willing to apologize or not. What Nangongzhi wanted to know was what price he was willing to pay. Watergate, who had the idea of getting something for nothing, what price could he offer to make Nangongzhi move? In fact, Minato had already discussed the countermeasures with Shikaka Nara before coming here. According to the investigation of the Wood Leaf Umbu, the original root leader, Wood Leaf trader Shimura Danzo, was in the Land of Iron a few days ago. The Land of Iron is the designated location for the 5 Kage Summit. Although it's not completely certain what Shimura Danzo's intentions are, Shimura Danzo himself is a person who won't act until he sees a rabbit. There must be a reason for him to appear in the Land of Iron. Yes, Nangongzhi may not care about anything, but for the Wood Leaf trader Shimura Danzo, who destroyed his stable life and kidnapped his family, he must have great hostility. Once he hears Danzo's movements, Nangongzhi will certainly not be able to maintain his current calm state of mind. It has to be said that Shikaka Nara is really a genius. Chapter 506. After hearing Danzo's name, Nangongzhi remained calm, but Mashiro, who had been sitting beside Nangongzhi and Watergate, had a strange expression on his face. Although Mashiro had deliberately buried the fact that she was sent to Nangongzhi's side as a member of Root to monitor him, she had to admit that this matter was a heart-wrenching pain for her. She might not show it on her usual self, but once someone mentioned it, she definitely couldn't remain calm. Looking at Mashiro's slightly pale face and his trembling hands, Nangongzhi couldn't help but feel distressed. Because Mashiro didn't receive any ninja training when he was en route, he only received training as an intelligence officer, so he didn't have much access to information. Almost everyone en route had received the seal of Tung Bane, but it wasn't used on Mashiro. But almost all the brainwashing processes en route were used on Mashiro, and the fear of Root was deeply rooted in Mashiro's heart. Even now, Mashiro was very emotional that he was able to overcome the fear in his heart and chose to stand on Nangongzhi's side. Just when Mashiro's heart was still trembling, a warm feeling suddenly wrapped around Mashiro's trembling hands. This warm feeling went straight from Mashiro's arms to Mashiro's heart, and this warmth directly restored Mashiro's usual calm and intellectual feeling. Mashiro knew that this kind of reassuring strength could only come from one person, and it was the person who pulled him out from Root and allowed him to live an ordinary and happy life, his Miyagi, Nangongzhi. Slowly raising his head, Mashiro's eyes met Nangongzhi's eyes. Although Nangongzhi didn't say a word, Mashiro knew that no matter how uneasy he was, the person who could calm him down must be the person who was holding his hand. "Don't worry, I'm here." After Nangongzhi nodded to Mashiro, he looked at Watergate, who was sitting opposite him. Who would have thought that Minato would be able to leave such a trump card in his hands? Nangongzhi didn't doubt the authenticity of this information. After all, Watergate should be very clear in his heart that he had an extremely capable intelligence network in his hands. As long as he wanted to verify it, he would definitely be able to verify it. Although he had a grudge against Watergate for using such a method in front of Mashiro, Nangongzhi couldn't understand Watergate's actions. After all, Mashiro's direct action was more powerful than passing this kind of information directly to him. Watergate knew how much he cherished his family. Starting from what he cherished the most, Watergate had indeed matured into a qualified politician and wasn't as stubborn as before. "I'll go to the 5 Kages tournament, and I'll accept the title of a follower. But I'll just show my face there, I won't make a move. Even if I make a move, it will be because of Danzo. This is my condition." Hearing Nangongzhi's words, Watergate's face also hung a smile. Even if Nangongzhi won't make a move, Watergate's purpose has already been achieved. If he really needs to fight, in fact, Watergate himself is very confident that he can survive among the 4 Kages. If Watergate uses Sage Mode, everything will end faster. So things like fighting don't need Nangongzhi's direct participation. Watergate only needs Nangongzhi's reputation in the ninja world. After a brief discussion with Nangongzhi about the matters related to the 5 Kages tournament, the meeting place and the departure time, Watergate left Nangong's house with satisfaction. After seeing Watergate off at the gate, Nangong slowly walked back to his house. Mashiro was sitting in the living room at the moment. Although Nangong temporarily comforted Mashiro, such a thing involving a very deep psychological problem can't be solved in a short time. After Watergate came, Little Linger and Nangong Ro, who had been hiding in their rooms, both came to Mashiro's side. The two girls hugged Mashiro, who has always been like an elder sister, and softly comforted him. Nangong also nodded after seeing this. Nangong knows that comforting people like this is not something he is good at. Since Little Linger and Nangong Ro have taken on this task, it is naturally better. Nangong directly returned to his room and picked up the Heaven's Retribution sword that he placed on a shelf. He casually picked up a soft white cloth and began to slowly wipe the Heaven's Retribution sword's pitch-black spine with some cracks. Although there was a cloth between them, Nangong could still clearly feel the cold touch of the Heaven's Retribution sword. Could it be that Nangong wasn't angry at all? Of course not. In terms of hatred for Danzo, Nangong was not weaker than anyone. However, at that time, Watergate was sitting opposite him, and Mashiro was sitting beside him. At this time, Nangong absolutely can't lose his mind. Therefore, Nangong forcibly suppressed the anger in his heart. On one hand, he could make Mashiro feel at ease, and, on the other hand, he could make Watergate unable to see through his thoughts. It was only when there was no one around him that Nangong was able to let out all the emotions in his heart. At this moment, although Nangong doesn't seem to have anything special, once someone can get close to Nangong, they can immediately feel a chill from the depths of their bones. But unlike this bone-chilling cold, Nangong's eyes at this moment seem to be ignited with a blazing flame, burning the body and soul. At this moment, it seems that he is looking for the next target to be burned by such a raging flame. Danzo, I accidentally let you escape in the past, and there's been no news about you for many years. I thought that you would live like a cockroach in the ninja world. But I didn't expect that you would actually start to come out and cause trouble again. In that case, I naturally can't turn a blind eye to it. This 5 Kage's convention will be the end of your life. The hand holding the white cloth involuntarily exerted force, and the sharp blade of the Heaven's Retribution sword directly cut through the cloth. Even Nangong's finger was cut, but Nangong seemed to be completely unmoved and just quietly held his sword. Chapter 507. Stop. Show me your ID. In the Land of Iron, outside the venue of the 5 Kage tournament, 2 people wearing iron armor and a katana at their waist stopped 3 figures in white. The Land of Iron itself is a country that is good at forging, and the main fighting force in this country is not ninja, but a new type of samurai that cooperates with the chakra sword technique. Hearing the words of the 2 people in front of them who are obviously the maintenance staff of the 5 Kage tournament, the 3 figures in white slowly took off the hood that completely wrapped their heads. The person in the lead has a long golden hair, and his face has a very comfortable and warm smile, and behind this person with golden hair, there is a young man with onion hair, and his eyes flashed with wisdom from time to time. The person on the other side has a very soft, long black hair, starry eyes, and sword-like eyebrows, looking very imposing, and on the back of this person, there is a dark sword hilt that looks very conspicuous. As the maintenance staff of the venue, the portraits of the main participants of this conference have naturally been handed over to them early on. Moreover, in front of the 2 of them, in addition to the person with long black hair, they were wearing the iconic Konoha forehead protector on their foreheads at the moment. Hokage-sama, welcome to the 5 Kage tournament. Please come in. After entering, there will be a special person to arrange accommodation for you and your entourage. When all the Kage have arrived, the 5 Kage tournament will be held as scheduled. Hearing the voices of the 2 new samurai, Watergate also maintained his warm smile and nodded to the 2 people, then walked into the venue of the 5 Kage tournament with Shikamaru Nara and Nangong behind him. Looking at the figure of Watergate and his party leaving, the 2 samurai in charge of the reception can't help but quietly get together, whispering to each other. Fourth Hokage-sama, Minato Namikaze is really as good as the rumors say. Unlike the fourth Raikage of the Cloud Village who came first, that arrogant look is simply uncomfortable to the extreme. Although we are a small country, we shouldn't be ignored like this, right? Hearing his companion suddenly began to say such words, the other samurai quickly reached out his hand to cover his companion's mouth and said anxiously to his companion, "Don't talk nonsense. Don't talk nonsense." The fourth Raikage of the Cloud Village is famous for his bad temper. Once what you just said reaches his ears, can you still save your life? Although we still have a certain fighting power compared to ordinary people, we are still worthless in front of a Kage. Hearing his companion's words, the obviously talkative warrior nodded his head to indicate that he understood. He let his companion release his hand from his mouth and took a deep breath of the slightly cold, fresh air. The talkative warrior then said to his companion, "Don't worry, I'm not going to give you a chance. You're not going to give me a chance. Don't worry, I naturally. Only you and I are here. That's why I dare to say these words. But I don't know the identity of the two followers who came here with Watergate, that Tsuchikage of the Rock Village who came here before also brought his own granddaughter. Now the season is approaching late winter, and the Land of Iron is a country located in the northern part of the continent. So it has been snowing a lot during this period of time. Even the ground is covered with a thick layer of snow at this moment. In such cold weather, the two samurai can't just stand here stupidly. A little chat can be regarded as a way to relieve some loneliness. Hearing that his companion didn't ask any sensitive questions, the samurai, who seems to be quite steady, was also happy to chat with his companion. If I'm not wrong, that seems to be Shikamaru, the son of Woodleaf's think tank, Shikakanara. Although he doesn't have any special achievements in these years, and he is only a chunin, he has been assisting his father in some Woodleaf matters. It seems that this boy is the follower selected by Watergate to act as the think tank, which is very appropriate. Most of the followers of the Five Kage Conference follow a combination of one scholar and one warrior. Since Shikamaru is obviously not a person who can represent the strength of Woodleaf, the one who can represent the strength of Woodleaf naturally falls on the person with long black hair and sharp eyebrows. Then is the person who didn't wear the Woodleaf headband the person selected by Watergate to represent the strength of Woodleaf? But I don't seem to have heard of a person with such characteristics among the strong people of Woodleaf. After the samurai heard the steady samurai's words, he immediately said impatiently. And after the steady samurai heard the words of the samurai, his eyes flashed with a trace of reminiscence. And then he said to the samurai, "I'm not sure if I really recognize the identity of this person. After all, this person has been living in seclusion for a long time. In the past 10 years, there have been no rumors about him in the ninja world, but just now the black sword hilt exposed from his white cloak made me vaguely recognize his identity. If I have to describe it, maybe it can only be described as living in legends, as well as the memory of people's fear. This kind of appearance is more appropriate. After all, this person is called Yama of Woodleaf, a legend that has been hidden in the long river of time." Woodleaf Yama? Such a name suddenly broke into the mind of the samurai. The memory of rescue that was sleeping in the samurai's memory was slowly awakened. What is Woodleaf thinking, actually pulling such a peerless, strong person, a peerless beast, back into the ninja world? Is this just a simple demonstration of power? This is simply a preparation for a direct battle. Watergate and Watergate, together with Xianxia, such a combination can easily crush all the ninjas and samurai here. Looking at the direction of Watergate's group, whether it was the samurai or the steady samurai at this moment, their hearts were full of worry at this moment. If it wasn't for his fierce reputation, if it wasn't for his cruelty and ruthlessness, how could Xianxia be crowned with the name of Yama, which is full of death aura? This 5 Kage convention, after just seeing such a participant, is already full of a kind of tribulation. Chapter 508. This 5 Kage tournament is the first 5 Kage tournament since the shinobi world was pacified and the establishment of the 5 major villages. It can be said that it is an event of great historical significance. As the host country, the Land of Iron is naturally well prepared. In order to prevent the Kage from doing anything in private before the 5 Kage tournament, the Land of Iron has arranged for each Kage and their 2 attendants to be scattered, enough to ensure that there won't be any situation where 2 Kage from 2 villages meet in advance to form an alliance before all 5 Kage arrive. On the second day after Watergate, Xianxia and Shikamaru arrived at the Land of Iron's venue. The samurai of the Land of Iron came to inform Watergate's group that all the Kage from the 5 major villages have arrived and decided the time for the official meeting. Although there is still plenty of time, Watergate didn't relax. After instructing Shikamaru and Xianxia to make a short preparation, Watergate directly took Xianxia and Shikamaru to the venue of the 5 Kage tournament. After all, Xianxia has seen a lot of big scenes, so he didn't have any special feelings for such a scene. Such a 5 Kage tournament is actually a game between the Kage of the 5 major villages. Although Xianxia also knows how to exchange benefits and speculate about each other, he is too lazy to use his mind in such a place. Xianxia's goal from beginning to end is the information about Shimura Danzo that Watergate mentioned. On the contrary, Shikamaru, who has always looked young and mature, at this moment his eyes were a little erratic. From his slightly disordered breathing and abnormal trembling of his muscles, this child must have accumulated a lot of pressure. But at this moment, Watergate began to think about how to deal with the Kage of the other ninja villages in a while. How can he pay attention to the psychology of Shikamaru, who is just a substitute for Shikamaru? Although Xianxia doesn't care whether Woodleaf Village will lose face because of Shikamaru's obviously not calm performance, but seeing the boy embarrassed in front of him, Xianxia can't help but say, "Shikamaru, what's wrong? Are you a little nervous?" Hearing Xianxia's words, Shikamaru's was like a child who had just done a prank and was suddenly discovered. An indescribable embarrassment filled Shikamaru's face. But after all, he was a member of the Nara family. Naturally, he quickly discovered his gaffe and concealed his emotions. Shikamaru said to Nangang Tetsu, "Thank you, Nangang, Sama's concern. I didn't," Shikamaru said halfway, but his eyes met Nanganga's eyes. Shikamaru thought that his loss of self-control would be disdained by Xianxia, but at this moment, Nanganga's eyes were only filled with endless calmness and a little bit of concern. Shikamaru Nara's words that he wanted to cover up were all suppressed in his stomach. After nodding helplessly, Shikamaru said to Nangangia, "I'm sorry to let Nangang-sama see this. After all, although I helped father to deal with some insignificant Woodleaf affairs, but this kind of meeting with the 5 most powerful people in the ninja world really makes me feel inexplicable fear in my heart. After all, I'm not only a junior from the Nara clan, but I also represent the new generation of Woodleaf. To be honest, I'm very afraid that because of some of my actions, my companions and Woodleaf will lose face." Shikamaru's words were very serious. It takes a lot of courage to say all the fear and uneasiness in his heart. And for people with such courage, Nangangia is very appreciative. With a little bit of concern, Nangangia walked to Shikamaru's side and put his hand on Shikamaru's shoulder. After patting him gently, he said to Shikamaru, "In fact, you don't have to be so nervous. Although it sounds like the Kage of the 5 great ninja villages are unreachable and otherworldly, but don't be misled by such emotions. The so-called Kage are actually a group of ordinary people. There are also ordinary people who will be angry, sad, calculative, and confused. If you directly remove the identity of Kage that shrouds them, maybe you will find that some of them are not as smart as you, and not as serious as you." Although Watergate was not far in front of him, Nangangia still said this to Shikamaru. With the powerful strength of Watergate, even if Nangangia whispered in Shikamaru's ear, he can still hear it clearly, not to mention the conversation between Nangangia and Shikamaru. But at this moment, Not only did Watergate talk to Nangongzhe with his identity as Kage, but after hearing Nangongzhe's words, he also nodded slightly. As Nangongzhe said, Kage is not a god. As a human, he will naturally make mistakes and do all kinds of stupid things. At this moment, although it seems that Nangongzhe is talking to Shikamaru, but isn't he also talking to Watergate? After all, although Watergate seems to be in a good state at this moment, he has always been a friendly person. At this moment, Watergate didn't come up to comfort Shikamaru at all. It is enough to see that Watergate's heart isn't as calm as he looks on the surface. I didn't expect to be lectured by Nangongzhe one day. The corners of Shui Min's mouth curled into a smile. Although he was still a little worried about what would happen during the Five Shadows Summit, his originally heavy footsteps gradually relaxed. Even his speed of advancement became a little faster. Following behind Watergate, Nangongzhe and Shikamaru naturally walked quickly to the conference hall of the Five Kage Summit. Nangongzhe and Shikamaru opened the door of the conference hall, and a strong light emitted from the conference hall. When Watergate, Nangongzhe, and Shikamaru's eyes adapted to the stimulation of the strong light, the situation in the conference hall was seen by the three of them. Watergate deliberately set off early this time, so the conference hall now looked slightly empty. But at this moment, there was already a person sitting in the seat representing the Sunagakure of the Wind Country. The burgundy hair and the thick black circles around the eyes all prove the identity of this person. Sunagakure's fifth-generation Kazekage, original Ichibi Column Force, Gaara. Chapter 509. Hokage-sama. Seeing Watergate, Gaara stood up very politely and saluted to Watergate. In fact, as the Kazekage of Sunagakure, Gaara and Minato were on the same level in terms of status, so they just greeted each other casually. But at this moment, Gaara stood up directly from his seat and saluted Watergate with the etiquette of a junior to a senior. Watergate can understand Gaara's attitude towards him. After all, his child Uzumaki Naruto and Gaara have a close relationship. When Gaara was kidnapped by the Akatsuki, he was able to escape with the help of Woodleaf Village. So Watergate didn't feel any difference in Gaara's attitude at this moment. But although he can understand why Gaara saluted in his heart, Watergate still didn't show any arrogance and greeted Gaara very amiably. It turned out to be the Kazekage. I thought I would be the first one to come, but I didn't expect that the Kazekage has been waiting here for a long time. Hearing Watergate's words, although his smile was quite stiff, Gaara still explained to Watergate. Sunagakure is located in a relatively remote place, and it took a long time to come to the Land of Iron, so I'm actually the last one among the five Kage. The reason why the meeting hasn't been held in the past few days is because I was slightly delayed on the way. So when I came here, Mifune-sama said that he would let me have a good rest, but I thought that I have made the Kage wait for so long, so I immediately proposed to hold the Five Kage Conference. Listening to Gaara's words, Watergate finally had time to carefully observe the situation of Gaara, Kankuro, and Temari, who attended the conference with Gaara. Although he was in high spirits, both his face and body carried the air of a traveler after a long journey. After all, Gaara has just become the Kazekage of Sunagakure. Although he has done his best over the years, participating in the Five Kage Conference, which is related to the fate of the entire ninja world, has also caused a certain amount of pressure on Gaara. It is precisely this kind of pressure that directly exposed the shortcomings of Gaara as a new Kage. If there was no one to help him, Gaara would definitely be swallowed up in such a Five Shadows conference without leaving any bones behind. Just when Watergate opened his mouth and was about to mention the fifth Kazekage of Sunagakure, who has a good relationship with his son and has reached an agreement with Woodleaf Village, a charming and heroic voice came into Watergate and Gaara's ears. Oh, I didn't expect that the Kage of two ninja villages would already have a good chat with each other. I don't know if you two mind if I chat with you to pass the time? Watergate and Gaara looked at the source of the voice at the same time. A woman with long reddish-brown hair wearing a high-slit skirt was standing at the gate at the moment, looking at Gaara and Watergate, who were talking with interest. The person who spoke to Gaara and Watergate was none other than the fifth Kage of the Mist Village, Terumi Mei, who ended the history of the Mist Village. Behind Terumi Mei, there were two attendants. One of them had an eye patch covering one of his eyes, and the other one had blue hair. The other one had a huge weapon tied tightly with a bandage on his back, and the other one had blue hair and had a huge weapon tied tightly with bandages on his back. Xianxia, who has been following Watergate and trying to reduce his presence, saw Terumi Mei and Chojiro, but he couldn't help but stare at them for a while. After all, before he grew up, Xianxia had already fought with Terumi Mei on the battlefield more than once. Although Chojiro's weapon was tightly tied, Xianxia was still very keen to recognize the origin of the weapon. It was one of the 7 ninja swords of the Mist Village. Chojiro didn't notice Xianxia's gaze because of his lack of strength, but Terumi Mei was a strong ninja level, so she still noticed Xianxia's gaze. She instinctively looked at the person who was peeking at her, but she saw Xianxia, a person who she didn't expect to participate in the 5 Kage tournament with Watergate. With Leaf, Yama. Although she tried her best to control her emotions, Terumi Mei still couldn't help but call out Xianxia's title. Perhaps Xianxia's real name is not so famous in the ninja world, but Xianxia's nickname can be said to be buried in the hearts of almost everyone in the ninja world. Xianxia can be said to be a nightmare in the hearts of Wood Leaf's enemies. After hearing Terumi Mei's subconscious exclamation, Ao and Chojiro, who were behind Terumi Mei, immediately rushed between Xianxia and Terumi Mei. Although they didn't directly take out their weapons, they were obviously on guard. After seeing the extreme actions of Ao and Chojiro, Xianxia's mouth also slightly raised a smile. Perhaps Xianxia hoped that he could ease the tension of the two ninjas standing opposite him a little through his smile, but Chojiro and Ao became more and more nervous after seeing Xianxia's smile. After all, it is rumored that with Leaf Yama always has a gentle and cold smile on his face when he kills people. Okay, you two don't have to embarrass yourselves here. Seeing the slightly extreme reaction of her subordinates, Terumi Mei finally adjusted her emotions and stopped the two men standing in front of her, then slowly walked forward a few steps to Xianxia and said to Xianxia, "It's really been a long time. There has been no news about you over the years. I don't know how many people said that you have lost your life for some reason, but I know that you will not lose your life so easily. After all, you are one of the few men in the world that I, Terumi Mei, approve of." Hearing Terumi Mei's words, Xianxia also slowly nodded his head. In this world, the people who are most likely to sympathize with each other are not friends, but their former enemies. Such a person who racked his brains to study your experience and your thoughts in the middle of the night just to defeat you, isn't he the person who is most likely to sympathize with you in this world? Chapter 510. Indeed, I haven't seen you for a long time, but today's protagonist isn't me. After the 5 Kage tournament is over, you and I can catch up. In the past, we were always enemies, and you and I didn't even sit together to drink tea and chat. Obviously, the Kage of his own village was right beside him, but Xianxia still made an agreement to chat with the Kage of another village. If such behavior was really seen by a narrow-minded person, they might think that Xianxia was already disloyal. However, Watergate stood on the side and watched Xianxia and Terumi Mei talking. He didn't feel any anger at all. On the contrary, he felt very gratified that Xianxia met his old friend. Gaara and the two followers who followed Watergate looked at Watergate with admiration, but Watergate was actually a little unhappy in his heart. After all, although he knew that Xianxia's heart wasn't on the wood leaf, and he couldn't directly order Xianxia as he would his subordinates. However, Minato was nominally the strongest person in his shinobi village, and he used all his means to invite him to support his shinobi village. Now, he was talking happily with the Kages of other shinobi villages, which really made Minato very uncomfortable. But at this moment, Watergate's mind and calmness have been shown incisively and vividly. After all, as a mature person, as a qualified Kage, Hiding his emotions well and showing the most appropriate state is the greatest growth that Watergate has gotten after being a Kage for so long. Of course, this atmosphere that made Watergate feel uncomfortable didn't last long, because as the organizer of the 5 Kage tournament, Mifune, the samurai leader of the Land of Iron, along with Inoki, Sandame, Tsuchikage, and Inoki, the 4th Reikage of the Cloud, walked together to the venue of the 5 Kage tournament. Seeing that all the Kages of the 5 great ninja villages had arrived, Watergate, Terumi Mei, and Gara, who were standing together just now, also sat separately in their seats, waiting for the official opening of the 5 Kage tournament. Mifune slowly walked to the open space in the round table that belonged to the 5 Kages. Seeing that all the Kages of the 5 great ninja villages had taken their seats, he began to slowly say, "Today is a day that is worthy of being engraved in the history of the shinobi world, because today is another important 5 Kage tournament hosted by the god of shinobi, Senju Dakuma, after the establishment of the 5 great ninja villages. Presumably, the 5 Kages who received the invitation already know the reason for this 5 Kage tournament. Under the distribution of Senju Takuma Soma, the 9-tailed beasts that belonged to different ninja villages, but now only the 9 tails that belong to Woodleaf Village is still in the hands of Woodleaf Village. The rest of the 8-tailed beasts have all been captured by an organization that has always existed in the form of mercenaries, Akatsuki. All of this has happened almost in just a few months. Although we don't know the purpose of Akatsuki's capture of the tailed beasts, but the powerful tailed beasts were captured by Akatsuki. It's definitely not out of kindness. This is the topic of this year's 5 Shadows Conference. Everyone, please remain calm and discuss a solution." After briefly explaining the cause and effect, Mifune slightly bowed to the 5 Kages sitting around him and then left the center of the venue. After all, this meeting is the 5 Kage tournament, and as the leader of the Land of Iron, he is not qualified to participate in it. Seeing Mifune leave, the 5 Kages from the major ninja villages also fell into silence for a while. After all, in this situation, whoever speaks first will easily become the target of public criticism. Being able to become the Kage of a ninja village is not easy to deal with. So at this moment, everyone remained silent. When everyone's attention was focused on the calm before the storm, Nangongja looked at Mifune, who was standing on the side, without saying anything. He didn't know why, but Nangongja always felt that he could feel a slightly familiar aura from Mifune, but it was obviously the first time he saw this samurai leader of the Land of Iron. Nangongja didn't think that his feeling was wrong. As a warrior, shouldn't he trust his intuition the most? But after all, this is just a little doubt in his heart, not enough to be used as evidence. So Nangongja can't make things difficult now. Otherwise, it would be the same as taking the face of the 5 great ninja villages directly from the face of these Kages, and then putting them on the ground and stepping on them. Although Nangongja is not afraid of the anger of these Kages, but after all, the less trouble, the better. When he can fully confirm the inexplicable feeling in his heart, Nangongja will absolutely not hesitate. As the convener of this 5 Kage tournament, let me speak first. Otherwise, won't we have to keep silent like this? I don't know when we can officially start the meeting. The 4th Reikage AI has a fiery temper. Compared to the other Kages, he didn't like this atmosphere. So he took the lead and said, "The Nibi and the Hachibi, column force, Yujito Nibi and Killer Bee have been forcibly taken away by the Akatsuki. Yujito Nibi is an outstanding ninja of our ninja village, and Killer Bee is my sworn brother. These 2 people were directly taken away by the Akatsuki. It made me very angry. After some investigation, I found that the Akatsuki not only took away the ninjas of our Kyumo Shinobu village, but also the 5th Reikage and more bijou. This made me realize the seriousness of the problem. So I gathered several Kages of various ninja villages here to discuss how to deal with the threat of the Akatsuki." The 4th Reikage AI has a fiery temper, but this time his speech was reasonable, and even in such a process, he didn't show too much of his anger. This is not because he suddenly changed his temperament. On the contrary, because he attached enough importance to this matter, so he restrained his temper and said to the other Kages. After the fourth Reikage AI finished these words, everyone also couldn't help but look at the fourth Reikage Bo Kaze Watergate, who was sitting calmly in his seat. After all, Bo Kaze Watergate defeated the 6 Paths of Pain and successfully guarded the wood leaf. With such a record, it's impossible to not gain anything, right? Chapter 511. After discovering that the eyes of the 4 Kage were looking at him, Watergate knew that he couldn't continue to remain silent. So Watergate slightly cleared his throat and stood up from his seat. Watergate, who obviously stood up under the gaze of the 4 Kage, looked very calm at the moment, as if he had already expected such a development. After tidying up his collar, Minato finally opened his mouth and said, "Don't worry. We would have a deep understanding of the Akatsuki organization. It is precisely because of this understanding that our Wood Leaf Ninja Village is more clear about what kind of dangerous organization Akatsuki is. In our information, we have roughly figured out the composition of the Akatsuki organization. Although the Akatsuki organization has a large number of ordinary members, but standing at the top of it, there are 10 who have their own title and can wear the Akatsuki's signature black robe with red clouds." After saying that, Watergate suddenly stopped his mouth, looked around the other 4 Kage, sitting on the seat with his eyes, then continued. "In fact, the 10 members standing at the top of the Akatsuki organization actually have a certain relationship with 4 of our 5 great ninja villages. Akatsuki organization South Kisame comes from the Mist Village of the Land of Water. Jade Sasori comes from the Sand Village of the Land of Wind. Blue Deidara comes from the Iwagakure of the Land of Earth. And Ju Itachi Uchiha and Kong Orochimaru come from our Wood Leaf Village. In addition to the above few ninjas who have a relationship with the 4 great ninja villages, there are also Zero Pain and White Conan, who belong to the Rain Village of the Land of Rain, Katakaka, who belongs to the Waterfall Village of the Land of Waterfall, and Mitsui Taiden, who belongs to the Yukagura of the Land of Spring. There is also Hoodlum, who inherited the title of Jade from the Scorpion of the Crimson Sand, and Zetsu, who has the title of Black." After roughly explaining the composition of the members of Akatsuki organization to the 4 Kages, Watergate didn't have time to say anything when a rather sarcastic voice barged into everyone's ears. "Wood Leaf Village is really worthy of being one of the top 5 ninja villages. I didn't expect such a powerful and dangerous Akatsuki organization to have a ninja belonging to Wood Leaf Village. This really makes this old man admire them to the extreme." Looking at the source of the voice, it was Sandame Anoki, who was sitting on the seat of the Tsuchikage. Anoki is a very stubborn, old-fashioned, and extreme old man. If it wasn't for Anoki's powerful Kekiai Jinkai dust release, it is estimated that he would have died several times because of his temper. Anoki's expression at the moment looked quite angry. It may be because he heard the name of Deidara from Watergate's mouth, so his mood became unstable. But after hearing Anoki's provocative words, Watergate didn't feel angry because of this, but went on to say, "In Akatsuki organization, we can now confirm the death of Sasori, Deidara, Kaku, Haiden, and Pain. Among these people, except for Deidara, who didn't die in the hands of our Wood Leaf Ninja, the rest were all killed by our Wood Leaf Ninja. And among them, Itachi Uchiha is actually a spy planted by our Wood Leaf in Akatsuki organization in the early years. Although he lost his life for various reasons, we will never let down such a loyal person. Before coming here, we have decided to engrave the life of Itachi Uchiha, who has sacrificed his life for Wood Leaf, on the Wood Leaf Memorial Tablet. We can't let such a hero who is willing to give up everything just to find out the situation of Akatsuki organization bear the name of traitorous ninja and welcome eternal sleep." Hearing Watergate's words, Nara Shikamaru, who has been standing behind Watergate without saying a word, was also surprised. Because his father is Minato's trusted aide, Shikamaru can actually know more about the decisions of Konoha's higher-ups than other people. Since the establishment of Wood Leaf Village, no ninja with the name of traitorous ninja has been ordinary. And now, although Watergate said that he has obtained the unanimous approval of Woodleaf, but Shikamaru is very clear that Watergate is actually fabricating such information. The reason why Itachi Uchiha became a traitorous ninja is because he slaughtered his own family, and now Watergate is willing to rehabilitate Itachi Uchiha. Isn't a disguised admission that Woodleaf also played a role in the extermination of Uchiha clan and added fuel to the fire, and even played a role in the dark? This kind of behavior is really somewhat unwise. But since the decision has already been made, and it was even made in front of the other 4 Hokage of Konoha and the samurai leader of the Land of Iron, no matter what, Konoha can only follow Minato's words. Although Watergate's words are a bit reckless, but almost completely dispels any suspicious speculation between Woodleaf and Akatsuki. After all, the current situation is a bit unfavorable for Woodleaf, for the 5 major ninja villages have lost their own people column force. Why didn't Woodleaf lose their own people? The 4 ninja villages have more or less suffered a big loss in the hands of Akatsuki. Why only Woodleaf village can defeat the invading enemy, and even directly kill the leader of Akatsuki? Although all of this can be explained by the strength of Woodleaf, but such an explanation is really difficult for the other 4 Kage to believe. Everyone is a big ninja village in the ninja world. No one is worse than the other. Even if they are worse, they absolutely can't admit it. This is political correctness. After seeing that Inoki made things difficult for Watergate and was directly slapped in the face by Watergate, Yandame Reikage, who was the convener of the meeting, also spoke. Sandame Suchikage, don't ridicule others like this. I have received information that a Wagakure once hired Akatsuki. I don't know if you can explain to us what kind of deal you made with Akatsuki. Reikage was the convener of the meeting, and he also hoped that this meeting can get some results and not become a complaint and wrangling between the 5 major ninja villages. So after seeing Sandame Suchikage and Inoki's behavior, he can only say such words to shut Inoki's mouth. Chapter 512. After hearing Yandame Reikage AI's words, Inoki, who originally wanted to say something, was directly choked by such a reprimanding question. But for such words, Inoki can't completely ignore it, but he must say something to express his attitude, just like Watergate, who would rather smear Woodleaf's reputation and completely disassociate himself from the Akatsuki. Everyone knows that although the Akatsuki was secretive before it was exposed, it can be regarded as a mercenary organization with good credibility. Not to mention our Iwagakure, who dares to say that we have nothing to do with a mercenary organization like the Akatsuki? It's just a matter of one giving money and the other completing the mission. Such a transaction is not worth discussing. Although Inoki's words still had some hidden hostility, the other Kage, sitting in their respective seats, were speechless. There are many things that can't be done by the ninjas of their own village. So a mercenary organization like the Akatsuki that only recognizes money regardless of the mission content has become the best choice for everyone. This in itself is a tacit thing between everyone, and now that it was suddenly said out loud, it made everyone a little embarrassed. Looking at Inoki's style, Mifune, who was standing on the side and watching the reaction of all the Kage, also flashed a trace of light in his eyes. Inoki is really a person who acts quite similar to him. Just when a meeting fell into an awkward silence for a while, a space vortex slowly appeared in the center of the venue, and a somewhat frivolous voice drilled into everyone's ears. Oh my, this is really an eye-opener. He thought that the 5 Kage's conference would be a serious meeting, but he didn't expect that the 5 people sitting here, who represented the pinnacle of the ninja world, were like aunties quietly arguing in the morning market. If they weren't exposing each other's shortcomings, then they were talking nonsense and shirking responsibility. It was really surprising. A group of people like you. How can you stop our Akatsuki's plan? Such a frivolous voice may be a bit unfamiliar to others, but for Nangongju and Watergate, it was particularly familiar, because not long ago, Nangongju had fought with the owner of this voice, and Namikaze Minato had a very unforgettable hatred with the owner of this voice. The owner of this voice was precisely the masked man Hoodlum, the mysterious member of the Akatsuki organization that was mentioned in the Watergate. Xianxia took down the Heaven's Disaster Sword from his back and held in his hand. Obviously, he was ready to fight. But Watergate suddenly stopped Xianxia, who was standing behind him. Before the battle between Xianxia and Hoodlum, Watergate had already obtained some information. Naturally, he knew that Xianxia seemed to have some means to prevent Hoodlum from using space ninjutsu. But as a ninja who was also proficient in space ninjutsu, Watergate at this moment felt that Hoodlum standing in the center of the venue at this moment didn't seem to be using his body. Instead, there was a kind of illusory feeling. Since Hoodlum dared to appear here, naturally he was well prepared, so it was better to give Hoodlum a chance to perform. Maybe he could get some interesting information from his mouth. But not everyone was like Watergate, who was able to control their emotions. For example, he stood up with Chakra's aura surging all over his body. The powerful lightning release chakra instantly turned into a blue and white lightning that wrapped around his body. This state was A's unique posture when fighting. Lightning release chakra mode. Lightning release taijutsu. Under the stimulation of lightning release chakra, A's physical fitness was greatly improved. Almost instantly, he was standing in the center of the venue by Hoodlum's side. He fiercely hit Hoodlum's figure with his elbow. The huge force even caused the air to explode, creating a loud roar. Despite being the target of such a powerful attack, Hoodlum looked unperturbed, as if he didn't care about his own safety at all. Seeing Hoodlum's contemptuous attitude, it was instantly filled with anger. After all, as a Kage, how could his attack be ignored? This kind of thing was simply unforgivable, but at the same time, AI restrained his strength a little. Although the original all-out attack still looked aggressive, in fact, it had already been reduced to about 80% of its original strength. After all, although Hoodlum's fearlessness made A angry, it also made him vigilant. Sure enough, A, who was wrapped in lightning, directly hit Hoodlum's body, but it didn't seem to have any effect. Hoodlum, who was standing in the center of the venue, was like a transparent illusion. Rakich's attack directly passed through Hoodlum's body. When Rakich discovered that his attack actually passed through Hoodlum's body, he calmed down and withdrew his majestic chakra. Rakich's expression was grave as he looked at Hoodlum and asked, "Although I don't really understand how you avoided my attack, but I know that the current you is definitely not your original body. Since you are willing to take such a big risk to come to the 5 Kages tournament's venue, it can't be just to ridicule us. Then please tell us, what is your purpose?" Seeing that Rakich had calmed down, Hoodlum's eyes flashed with a trace of astonishment. It seems that Rakich wasn't as impulsive and easily angered as the information said. "That's right, I naturally didn't come here empty-handed. I have prepared a big gift for all of you. I actually understand the purpose of all of you gathering here. Isn't it to discuss a countermeasure to deal with our Akatsuki organization? But looking at all of you acting like headless flies, randomly suspecting each other and attacking each other, I really can't stand it anymore." With that said, Hoodlum's voice even carried a hint of disappointment. It was as if he regarded the Kage of the various shinobi villages present as a group of children who don't know the immensity of the sky and the depth of the earth. "I came here to tell you how powerful the Akatsuki organization's grand plan is, and how beneficial it is to the ninja world." Chapter 5:13. In ancient times, human beings were still in an uncivilized state, and every day, endless battles broke out in the world. At the same time, it also meant that countless living beings had lost their lives. Until a man appeared, and with his godlike eyes, he brought peace and ninjutsu to the shinobi world. This man is called the first ancestor of the shinobi world, the Six Paths Sannin. Obviously, Hoodlum said that he was going to talk about his grand plan, but he suddenly began to talk about the myths that have been circulating in the shinobi world for a long time. Six Paths Sannin. No one knows whether such a person is a real person or not, But in the shinobi world, from 80 old men to 3-year-old children, they all have some understanding of such a person. But it is such a person who is usually regarded as an illusory, mythical figure. At this moment, Hoodlum said it in an unusually serious tone. It feels like such a legend that only exists in oral legends and ambiguous written records. But suddenly, a living Six Paths Sunin appeared. People don't know where the Six Paths Sunin got such a powerful power, and how he was able to create such wonderful existences like chakra and ninjutsu. But everyone is very clear about one thing, and that is the power of the Six Paths Sunin is beyond the dimension, and it is irrefutable. Hoodlum's only eye that was exposed outside the mask bloomed with a blazing light, and even the 3 Tomo in the 3 Tomo Sharingan rotated quickly. After hearing Hoodlum's words, whether it was Xianxia or anyone else present, their hearts throbbed. Vaguely, Xianxia felt that what Hoodlum said at this moment may be related to the deepest secrets of the shinobi world. However, the power of the Six Paths Sunin is not innate. The source of almost endless power for the Six Paths Sunin is the strongest creature called Jubi. And hearing this name, I think you already know that this so-called Jubi has an extremely close relationship with the 9-tailed beasts in the Kage's shinobi village. The so-called 9 great-tailed beasts are actually formed after the power of the 10 tails was dispersed. Just the scattered power can become the trump card in the hands of the major ninja villages. Then how powerful is the real Jubi? The purpose of our Akatsuki organization collecting tailed beasts is to let Jubi reappear in the world. After hearing Hoodlum's words, the 4th Reikage AI said to Hoodlum, "So your goal is to summon the 10 tails and become its human column force? Then rely on the power of the Jubi to become the most powerful existence in this world, and then use his own power to suppress the shinobi world? In the ninja world, the power of a bijou cannot be directly used. If you want to use the power of a bijou, you have to seal the bijou in the body of ninja, and then use the power of the bijou through the seal." Even AI's younger brother, Killer Bee, can cooperate almost perfectly with the Hachibi in his body, but the seal imposed on Killer Bee still exists. The seal is not only a restriction on the bijou, but also a means of protection for column force. No. After hearing the words of the 4th Reikage AI, Hoodlum slowly shook his head and then said to AI, "You really are a group of people who lack imagination. Can bijou really only make an individual stronger? How can one person bring eternal peace to the ninja world by fighting alone? What I want is to seal the Jubi in my body and then use the power of the Jubi to further stimulate the power of my Sharingan. With the help of the Jubi's power, I will project the most powerful Jinjutsu contained in the Sharingan, Tsukuyami, on the moon, and the moon in the sky will forever hang in the sky because of the power of the Jubi, and the place where the moonlight can be spread will be the range of the Tsukuyami. This is my plan, the Eye of the Moon plan. Everyone will be immersed in the Tsukuyami, and there will never be any pain in that world. There will only be eternal stability and peace. Isn't such a utopian world good?" Hoodlum's tone was full of yearning and deep sadness. But for the leader of a shinobi village like Watergate, personal sadness can simply be ignored. After all, the so-called Eye of the Moon plan that Hoodlum just mentioned will drag everyone in the shinobi world into the infinite Tsukuyami, making everyone live in a false world. Such a thing is really difficult to accept. Coward. Just when everyone was thinking about how to deal with the Eye of the Moon plan mentioned by Hoodlum, a slightly murderous voice suddenly broke into everyone's ears. Everyone looked at the place where the voice came from, and the person who spoke was Xianxia, who has been standing behind Watergate since the opening of the 5 Kage tournament and almost didn't say a word. At this moment, Xianxia was holding his Dark Heaven's Retribution sword in his hand. His shoulder-length hair was fluttering without wind, and his sharp eyebrows were flowing with a different kind of sharp aura. We live in this world, and everyone is destined to experience all kinds of sad things. Even the Kage of the 5 great shinobi villages here have experienced all kinds of heartbreaking things. But has anyone ever chosen to escape into the virtual world to be free from sadness? Infinite Tsukuyomi? I have the moon plan. I thought that the Akatsuki had some kind of conspiracy, even if it was just like what Yondaime Reikage said, creating a Jubi column force to fight against the entire shinobi world. I don't feel uncomfortable. But what you have been plotting is just to build a virtual world, deceiving yourself and deceiving others. It's ridiculous. There is no way to face his sadness. There is no way to overcome his sadness. Even if he really has the same level of power as the Six-Path Sannin, he is still a weakling, a coward who sees himself as a weakling. If the enemy we are facing is just like this, then this 5 Kage conference is not going to happen. I, Nangongzhi, am enough to kill such a coward. At this moment, Nangongzhi was completely different from the general appearance he had at home. If you have to describe it, then Nangongzhi at home was a sword sheathed, and now Nangongzhi was a sword that didn't hide its sharpness at all. Seeing Nangongzhi like this, Terumi Mei's eyes flashed with a trace of nostalgia. The Nangongzhi who fought with her in the past was not a gentle gentleman, but a brave man who knew how to face difficulties. Chapter 514. Nangongzhi blurted out his thoughts, and at the same time, it also broke the thoughts of the Kage of the 5 great villages. Everyone who can rely on their own strength to become a Kage-level powerhouse, although not necessarily the most talented person, but certainly the most determined person. So Nangongzhi's words actually touched the bottom of everyone's heart. If a person's heart is not strong enough, he can't control the power beyond his limit. Too much power won't make people stronger. On the contrary, it will bring a person the fate of death. Ahaha dash. Well said. Worthy of the wood leaf Yamanangongzhi. When I saw you standing behind Yondaime Hokage without saying a word, I thought that you had been in seclusion for a long time, but now I see that you are still so sharp. It really makes me feel gratified. Among the 5 Kages, the most irritable, but also the most honest Reikage AI laughed after hearing Nangongzhi's words. If it wasn't because it wasn't the right time, AI might have already walked to Nangongzhi's side and put his arm around Nangongzhi's shoulder and let Nangongzhi accompany him to drink or fight. I am me. I will not change because of the passage of time. The sword in my hand exists for battle, and my martial skills are honed for battle. I have never been afraid of battle. Nangongzhi carried his Heaven's Disaster Sword and slowly walked towards the center of the 5 Kages convention, where Hoodlum was standing. Nangongzhi stared emotionlessly at Hoodlum, who was emitting a faint aura of nothingness, before continuing. I know you came here, not only to show off the Akatsuki's plan, but more importantly, to test the attitude of the 5 great Kages towards the Akatsuki. At the same time, it is also a kind of pressure on the 5 great ninja villages. After all, you have already collected 8 of the 9-tailed beasts. But I believe that whether it is me or the other Kages, we will absolutely not yield in the face of such pressure, because we're different from you. We are prepared to face everything. If you want to fight, then let's fight. Seeing Nangongzhi directly issued a request for a battle, even if he was in a half-real and half-fake state. Hoodlum's heart was filled with an inexplicable sense of crisis. After all, Nangongzhi had relied on his sword chi and sword array to seal off his spatial transference ability. Even if Nangongzhi had used some other method to break his state between reality and illusion, Hoodlum felt that it was possible. Under the mask, Hoodlum's eyebrows slightly frowned together and directly disappeared from the center of the round table. He was standing in the middle of the room, a slightly remote decorative high platform. Fight? That's what I want. Then I am here on behalf of the Rain Village, on behalf of the Rain Village, on behalf of the Akatsuki, on behalf of the 5 great ninja villages, and on behalf of the other small countries, I declare war. After more than 10 years of war, a new round of Shinobi World War is about to be born. Let's fight, let's dance, let's show our respective styles in the sandstorm of war. Whether my ambition can be realized, or your insignificant existence can be maintained? Let's find out the answer in the war. Hoodlum looked at the 5 Kage standing in the field, as well as the other 10 followers of the 5 great shinobi villages and samurai of the Land of Iron, and issued his war declaration. When they heard Hoodlum's words, Sandame and Inoki's eyebrows slightly frowned together. Inoki's eyes stared at Hoodlum's 3 Tomo Sharingan, and suddenly an impossible idea appeared in his mind. Hoodlum's real identity. No, it can't be that person. Under Inoki's slightly frightened gaze, Hoodlum continued to speak. This war declaration is issued by me, Uchiha Madara, effective immediately. Then let's give a next stage to another person. Hearing Hoodlum's words, the Kages of the 5 great ninja villages had different reactions. The Hokage Namikaze Minato had some doubts and puzzlement. The Kazekage Gaara didn't seem to understand why a person who was rumored to have been killed by Hashirama would appear here. The Reikage AI's eyes were filled with fighting desire, and the Mizukage Mei's eyes were blooming with a trace of interest. However, although their expressions were different, there was a little doubt in their eyes. Unlike all the Kages before, Inoki's eyes were full of horror. When he was still a young and weak ninja, he once went to Konoha with his teacher, the second Kage, Tsuchikage, for diplomacy. At that time, he met the legendary Azura Uchiha Madara, who was as famous as Senju Hashirama. The peace talks between Awagakure and Woodleaf Village were directly rejected by Uchiha Madara. Uchiha Madara even directly attacked him and his teacher. The battle wasn't fierce at all. It was almost a one-sided crush. Both of them were seriously injured. At that time, Inoki wanted to climb up and continue to fight with Uchiha Madara in exchange for his teacher's death. But at that time, Uchiha Madara seemed to be tired of playing with him. He looked at Inoki, who was struggling, and slowly said, "Do you also want to dance in front of me?" Such a short sentence, even without any murderous intent or other momentum, directly broke through Inoki's psychological defense. Inoki only remembered that he directly collapsed on the ground, and he couldn't even move a finger. And Hoodlum's words, which sounded a bit ordinary, made Inoki directly think of the shadow that once covered his head for a long time. After Hoodlum finished his declaration of war, his figure directly twisted and disappeared. Instead, a figure wearing a white lined coat and a black robe with red clouds on it, holding a silver long sword and a 6-pointed star pattern in his eyes, stood where Hoodlum was standing. This person was the only orphan of the Uchiha family who left Nangongja and then joined Akatsuki and arrested the Hachibi column force for Akatsuki, Uchiha Sasuke. Chapter 515. Although Uchiha Sasuke suddenly appeared at the scene of the 5 Kage summit, Mizukage, Kazekage, and Tsuchikage chose to ignore him at the same time. After all, the declaration of war issued by Uchiha Madara made everyone's mind unsettled. Moreover, Uchiha Sasuke was the traitor of Woodleaf Village. Now, as the 4th Hokage, Kaze Watergate, was standing here, it was really not their turn to make a move, right? But just when Watergate didn't say anything, AI, the 4th Reikage, couldn't sit still. The Raikun Chakra mode was launched again, and a layer of lightning formed by chakra instantly covered Reikage's body. Under the stimulation of lightning attribute chakra, Reikage AI's physical fitness was greatly improved. Like a running thunder, AI almost instantly came to Sasuke's side. "You bastard! What did you take my brother?" AI questioned Sasuke loudly, and, at the same time, his hands were constantly launching various attacks. Sasuke quickly pulled out the silver long sword in his hand. Although he didn't have any sword moves that looked gorgeous, there was a sense of returning to the basics between each move. Every sword attack was just right on the power node of AI's punches and kicks. So although AI's attack was very powerful, he couldn't exert the power he should have every time, which made AI very uncomfortable. "Your brother?" Sasuke also observed Reikage's physical characteristics in the process of fighting with him. He also judged the fact that Reikage came from Cloud Village, so he went on to say, Is that the Hachibi column force who has been singing weird rap? Your brother wasn't caught by us. We just got a clone of him, made with Hachibi's tail. I don't know where he is now. Sasuke's purpose in coming to the 5 Kage summit was very clear. He didn't want to fight with the Kage of the major ninja villages present, but he wanted to find an enemy who had a blood feud with his family. Therefore, Sasuke hoped that he could not participate in any unnecessary battle as much as possible. After hearing Sasuke's words, although Raikage still didn't stop his attack, whether it was the rest of the ninjas around or Sasuke, who was the target of the attack, they clearly felt that the frequency and strength of Raikage's attack had decreased. Sasuke knew that although Raikage was skeptical of his words, Raikage knew his brother well enough. With his brother's character, he could do such a thing. After understanding this, Sasuke immediately used his chakra to simulate sword aura to cover the long sword in his hand. The slash was aggressive, but it didn't have much murderous intent. Raikage knew that this was actually a signal that Sasuke wanted to end the battle between the two of them. At this moment, Raikage finally realized that it was indeed very inappropriate for an outsider Kage to attack with Leaf's 4th Hokage. So, seeing Sasuke taking the initiative to give him a way out, Raikage also directly retreated to avoid Sasuke's attack, and the thunder surging on his body slowly disappeared. Seeing the end of the battle between Sasuke and Raikage, Watergate, who had been standing on the side, also said, "Uchiha Sasuke, tell me your purpose here." Watergate's words were cold, as if as long as Sasuke said any answer he didn't want to hear, Watergate might go berserk. But Sasuke didn't mind Watergate's cold tone. He just pointed the long sword in his hand in one direction and said to Watergate, "I came here for only one purpose, and that is him, an enemy who has a blood feud with me." Looking at the direction of Sasuke's sword tip, everyone was surprised to find that the so-called blood feud enemy in Sasuke's mouth turned out to be Samurai Leader Mifune, the host of this 5 Kages tournament. And after being pointed at by Sasuke's sword tip, Mifune didn't show any panic or confusion. Instead, he was very calm, too calm. I didn't expect that Akatsuki would still be able to determine my identity, even though I've hidden my whereabouts to this extent. Mifune said slowly, but the voice coming out of Mifune's mouth was completely different from before, and at the same time, a cloud of smoke also rose from Mifune's body. When the smoke dissipated, an old man with one of his eyes wrapped around his body stood on the ground instead of Mifune. This person was Sasuke's enemy, Nangong's enemy, and even Watergate's enemy, the leader of Wood Leaf Original Root, Wood Leaf's rebellious ninja, Shimura Danzo. I didn't think that I would be so careful, but I would still be disrupted by a brat like you, who I don't even put in my eyes. Do you know how strong I want to kill you now? Danzo's last sentence was almost a roar from Danzo's throat. At the same time, Danzo expressed his strong killing intent. A lot of smoke rose from the bodies of the land of Iron Samurai, who were responsible for the security work in the 5 Kages tournament venue, and one by one, they instantly turned into root ninjas. Although Danzo didn't say anything, every root ninja seemed to have received the mission of this battle before, and one by one, they rushed toward the Kage and their followers of the 5 great shinobi villages without fear of death. The ninjas of Root have undergone extremely terrifying brainwashing. As long as it's Danzo's order, they will sacrifice their lives without hesitation. When the Kage and their followers of the 5 great shinobi villages saw that they actually suffered an unexpected disaster, they naturally didn't maintain a calm mood and directly fought these root ninjas who dared to provoke them. At this moment, Sasuke wasn't stopped by the root ninjas, but Danzo, intentionally or unintentionally, quickly approached Danzo's side. Danzo held his cane, while Sasuke held his silver sword, and the weapons in their hands instantly intertwined. One's eyes were full of anger, while the other's eyes were full of hatred. Two equally negative and equally strong emotions seemed to be gushing out of their eyes at the next moment. Chapter 516. When a person's heart is completely filled with negative emotions, such as anger or hatred, there is no way to make rational judgments. At this moment, Sasuke and Danzo were indulging in their own hatred and anger. The two ninjas who mainly fought with ninjutsu didn't use any powerful ninjutsu at this moment. Instead, one held a crutch and the other held a long sword and began to attack each other. With the sound of the crutch and the long sword intertwining, the negative emotions in Sasuke and Danzo's heart not only didn't fade, but became more and more majestic. It's you. It's you. It's you. It's your plan. It's your ambition that made my family a sacrifice. My beautiful, pure, simple life has been shattered because of you. If it wasn't for you, the Uchiha clan wouldn't have perished. If it wasn't for you, my brother wouldn't have joined the Akatsuki and even risked his life to pass the information of the Akatsuki to you. Danzo, damn you, damn you, damn you. Gradually, Sasuke's swordsmanship began to change, and Danzo, who was standing opposite Sasuke, was even worse than Sasuke. After all, Sasuke was still much younger than Danzo, and Danzo's physical fitness was absolutely no match for Sasuke. At this moment, Danzo also felt like a broken jar. Although he knew that he was at a disadvantage, at this moment, Danzo felt like fighting to the death. Go to hell. Go to hell. Go to hell. After I was expelled from the Woodleaf village by Namikaze, Watergate, and Xianxia, those two bastards, I was like a rat crossing the street in the ninja world. I used to be the most powerful person in Konoha. But all of a sudden, I became a traitor of Konoha, a traitor of Konoha, a traitor of Konoha, a traitor of the shinobi world, who can barely survive in the dark corners of the shinobi world, despised like a cockroach. It's not easy, it's not easy. I learned about the opportunity of the 5 Kages tournament and almost mobilized all the remaining forces in my hands, covering my whereabouts, planning. Just a little bit more, and I could implement my plan, but whether it was you or that Uchiha Madara, they all came out one by one. Why, this is the only way I can think of to clear my name, but it was still destroyed by you. That's right, this time, Danzo spent almost all the resources he had, and even killed the samurai leader of the Land of Iron, so that he could come to the 5 Kages tournament and do something big and erase the Wood Leaf Trader's name, which is extremely humiliating for Danzo. It's ridiculous to say that for Shimura Danzo, who is the same generation as Sandaime, and the disciple of the legendary second Hokage of Wood Leaf, the most important thing is his reputation. Danzo can accept hiding in the dark to erase some troubles for the Wood Leaf, and Danzo can also accept his fierce name being feared by countless people. But what Danzo can't accept the most is the disdain and incomprehension from the Wood Leaf people. Everyone who is determined to throw himself into the dark is destined to find a refuge for his heart. Itachi Uchiha's refuge is his brother Uchiha, Sasuke, and Nagato's refuge is the almost naive vow to bring peace to the shinobi world when the Akatsuki was first established. For Danzo, the Wood Leaf that he has been fighting for since he was a child is his refuge. The more desperate a person is, the easier it is for them to rely on their original refuge. Although Danzo was driven out of the Wood Leaf by the cooperation of Watergate and Xianxia, the strange thing is that Danzo has never been angry with the Wood Leaf itself. Even now, it is obvious that Danzo arranged the root ninjas to rush towards Watergate, Xianxia, and Shikamaru. It is obvious that he took their strength into consideration, and even vaguely felt that he was protecting them. The Wood Leaf can lose himself, but it must not lose powerful ninjas like Watergate and Xianxia, and it must not lose a new force with unlimited potential like Shikamaru. Does Danzo hate Watergate and Xianxia? Of course, he hates them. But this hatred for Xianxia and Watergate is completely covered by Danzo's love for the Wood Leaf. At this moment, Danzo is thinking about how to make the last stage of his life play a greater role for the Wood Leaf. At the beginning, Danzo's plan was to disguise himself as Mifune to participate in the 5 Kage tournament, and during the tournament, he will try to keep a low profile and observe the Kage of each ninja village. By observing the performance of these Kage in the 5 Kage tournament and various kinds of information he usually collected, he will select a Kage who is hostile to the wood leaf and full of potential. Using the Uchiha clan's body flicker Shursui, Uchiha Shursui's Manjikyu Sharingan, he will subconsciously modify this Kage, making this Kage firmly stand in the camp of the wood leaf. After completing this matter, Danzo decided to return to the Wood Leaf Village with all his important information, ninjutsu scrolls, and the remaining power in his hands, and directly surrender to the 4th Hokage, Minato Watergate. He gave his Manjikyu Sharingan, which was in cooldown, to Minato Watergate, and wanted to explain the various arrangements he made. Even if there is no way to let everyone know what he has done, at least such an important event will be recorded in the secret scroll passed down in the hands of each generation of Hokage. Although he is not the Hokage, every Hokage in the future will see his deeds. Such an ending for Danzo is an acceptable end. But Sasuke suddenly appeared in front of him. He didn't know why, but Danzo's heart began to have a vague premonition. The Uchiha clan boy standing in front of him may become stronger than anyone in the future. Danzo's original plan has been slowly adjusted by Danzo himself. Using the precious Kodoame Tsukumi on Sasuke, isn't it a good choice to make Sasuke a loyal dog of the wood leaf? Chapter 517. When such an idea appeared in Danzo's mind, the benefits of doing so emerged one by one in Danzo's mind. Within Danzo's knowledge, the most threatening person to Wood Leaf Village was actually Hoodlum, who had just appeared with Sharingan. Danzo himself had 11 Sharingan as his trump card. In order to quietly eliminate Samboy Danzo, he used one of his Sharingan to use Izanagi. But even so, Danzo still has 10 Sharingan at this moment. Even his right eye has a Manjikyu Sharingan that can perform a super ninjutsu like Kodoame Tsukumi. At this moment, Sasuke also has a Manjikyu Sharingan. So can Sasuke be a means to deal with Hoodlum? Danzo was very clear that only Manjikyu Sharingan can fight against Manjikyu Sharingan. When Danzo thought about the gains and losses, he was no longer controlled by the anger in his heart. Only his exposed left eye flashed with a trace of decisiveness and wisdom at this moment. Danzo has decided to use Kodoame Tsukumi on Sasuke. Futon, True Void Wave. When Danzo regained his calm, his fighting style also changed back to what he was best at. Danzo's hand quickly formed a seal, and a wind release ninjutsu quickly formed. A sharp wind blade attacked in the direction of Sasuke. Danzo's sudden change in attack style made Sasuke somewhat uncomfortable. But after all, Sasuke can be considered as a battle-hardened veteran. After discovering the change in Danzo's mentality, Sasuke knew that he can't just indulge in the negative emotions in his heart. What he needs now is not to release the negative emotions in his heart, but to avenge his brother and his clansmen. Sasuke controlled his body and tried his best to avoid Danzo's wind release ninjutsu. But Vacuum Wave was a B-class ninjutsu. Its movement speed and attack power were extremely fast and powerful. And Sasuke was the one being attacked. There was a time difference in the middle, so although Sasuke tried his best to avoid Danzo's attack, there was no way for him to be completely unharmed. Vacuum Wave brushed past Sasuke's body, scratching a scar on Sasuke's cheek and taking away a strand of Sasuke's hair. But all of this was not what Danzo expected, because Danzo knew that if he fought Sasuke in close combat, he wouldn't have an advantage. The reason why he used Vacuum Wave was to force Sasuke to retreat and then have a long-range ninjutsu fight with him. But now, Sasuke was so fearless that he directly faced his ninjutsu. It was really unexpected. Sasuke's unexpected action also made Danzo pay more attention to his decision to turn Sasuke into a Leaf's loyal hound. Although Sasuke's current strength hasn't reached the peak of the ninja world, it's already very impressive. With a little training and stimulation, Danzo believes that Sasuke will make great progress. You must become Wood Leaf's loyal hound, Uchiha Sasuke. At this moment, Sasuke naturally didn't know what Danzo was planning. After all, Danzo never told anyone about his plan, and now Danzo changed his target in an instant. But Sasuke knew that this was the best time for him to deal with Danzo. Once he couldn't capture Danzo here, it would be difficult for him to catch the cunning Danzo later. Right Unchakra surged out of Sasuke's body and blessed the silver long sword in Sasuke's hand. The sword light mixed with the thunder produced by Right Unchakra made the silver long sword in Sasuke's hand burst out a dazzling light for a while. It looked like it directly turned into a long sword made of light. Such a long sword is not as simple as it looks. Whether it's the lightning chakra or the sword light, they are not simple things. Each of them has an extremely powerful power. Moreover, Sasuke still had his own trump card that he hadn't used yet. I must force Sasuke to retreat. Seeing the silver long sword in Sasuke's hand, Danzo knew that he absolutely couldn't fall into a close combat with Sasuke that was obviously disadvantageous to him, and too fierce close combat wasn't suitable for him to use Kodo Amatsukami to achieve his ultimate goal. Futon Vacuum Rinbwa. After seeing Sasuke getting closer and closer to himself, Danzo also quickly printed in his hand, hoping to distance himself from Sasuke through ninjutsu. In such a short distance, facing Danzo's double advantage in number and power, Sasuke knew that he had to dodge. Otherwise, he would definitely fall into a disadvantage. Or, can I show a part of my strength appropriately? At this moment, I can't retreat. Once I retreat, I will fall into Danzo's rhythm. In fact, the strength gap between me and Danzo is not so big. So if I want to win the battle and even cut Danzo under my sword, I must grasp the rhythm of the battle. I'd rather increase the consumption than retreat. Susanoo. Sasuke's heart silently recited the name of the ability he was about to use. The hexagonal pattern in Sasuke's eyes rotated quickly. Because of the large use of dojutsu, Sasuke's eyes even oozed blood. At the same time, the faint blue-purple chakra flame wrapped around Sasuke's body like a skeleton. Although Vacuum Rinbwa is very powerful, it is still a lot worse than Susanoo. After Sasuke saw that Vacuum Rinbwa was completely blocked by his Susanoo, Sasuke immediately undid his Susanoo. After all, using Susanoo was also very stressful for Sasuke. Holding his long sword wrapped in thunder and sword energy, Sasuke directly attacked Danzo with reverse Kasaya slash from bottom to top. The target of the attack was Danzo's right arm that had been hidden in his clothes and transplanted with Sharingan. You're tuning into the Eternal Immortal Ballad YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.